Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Metaverse Nomads podcast, where we discuss our favorite play to earn blockchain games. Collectively, the Metaverse Nomads lead a gaming guild called Rome. Rome is an international guild that is currently fully immersed in the Star Atlas metaverse. While you're here, please like and subscribe so we can keep you up with the Nomads as they traverse the metaverse. Joining me today is Jesse. How are you doing today, Jesse?
I am fantastic. Good to be here.
Very well. Pansy, how are you doing today?
Having a good Sunday. How about you?
Very good, very good. Bonafide, how are you doing today?
I'm outstanding. Thanks for asking.
Outstanding. And then Ray, how are you doing today?
Mic check. I'm doing fantastic.
We got you loud and clear. So we have a lot to talk about today. Of course, the priority is going to be Star Atlas. But before we get into that, Ray, what's going on in Axie?
Talk about today.
All right. So here we go with the Axie Infinity had its October development update just last week, Monday, after last week's broadcast, and we last talked about the round, the Series B round of so fancy if you can, with the first one, and
There you go.
so the day after our last broadcast, we have the update 1.1.0a. And long story short, this is here for people to stop the screen after recording is done. You could read through it yourself if you haven't seen it. And we basically have any MMR or level which is below 800 is no longer going to receive small love potions as a reward from adventure mode, arena, or the daily quests. And there was a heated debate on Twitter after this happened, because now you have the reasoning was the bots that are just performing the mundane task of just card selection just to earn small love potion, that's going to cease to exist anymore, and the bots are going to suffer. You know, the scholarship managers who just bred abominations of Axies just to give to their Filipino or South American players, around the world for scholarships, they're gonna get hit hard, because what the team wants to do, if we could slide over to the next one, is again, for your purposes of pausing and reading through, is this was G-Host's reasoning for why the update took place, and I believe this is also Axie Infinity as a whole, the team, and so you could pause and read through this, but for the most part, encouraging players to learn and becoming better battlers, right? For one thing, not just mindlessly, even if you weren't a bot, you could possibly mindlessly do adventure mode and not have any attention, and you could probably cook dinner while just mindlessly playing. And so there's going to be more focus on teaching and educating. So this is going to be a result of this change that's taking place. And so yeah, you could check that out. And then for going on to just basic stats from the October development update, these next 4 slides are going to be what we're showing you from the article if you haven't gone through it. So we have the 30-day NFT volume, and for the last 30 days, Axie Infinity is on top on their own side chain of the Ethereum network, and can't ignore that. So that's pretty cool.
Interesting thought on that last slide as you were
Sure.
showing the MMR. As someone that has about 15 of my own scholars there, 800, that is really low. I can't imagine too many people complaining about that. I would think they could even boost that to 1,000, because I don't have a single scholar team that goes under 1,200. So I don't think that that's asking much for people that are playing a competitive game. If you can at least be 1,000, you probably shouldn't get any SLP.
There you go.
No,
That was the main argument.
I'll co-sign on that as well. Yeah, my lowest scholar is over 1,000. So
Right, and it's right at the brink of getting to 1,000. Right, so it's probably most likely bots for the reasons of this change, and it's going to help us in the long run, like every other change that took place that people weren't okay with, because we have now the SLP being more valuable that's being produced or worked for. If you want to say that play to earn. Play to work, or proof of work. So we could get back to those stats if you guys don't have any other thoughts on the 800 MMR. And so this was pretty interesting. And the next one was also a graph that showed, it might be a little small here, but the protocol revenue for multiple networks. So from 1 inch all the way to Ethereum itself, and right there next to Ethereum, pretty small compared to Ethereum, but it's biggest compared to a lot of others behind it, is Axie Infinity at over 200. What is that? million. This is the top dApps and blockchain base for cumulative protocol revenue in the past 30 days. So this is a 30-day. And then the next one we have.
Wow, that's OpenSea that was on the left there.
Right. Yeah. Far surpasses OpenSea for sure. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Right. And these things are kind of like looked at or under the table. It's very subtle. These are very subtle, but exciting stats to look at because they're on their own blockchain or their side chain rather, and it's not typically involved in charts as you would see everything under Ethereum blockchain. Axie Infinity wouldn't technically be there if it was an Ethereum blockchain chart, so this is that's pretty cool. And then the next, heading over to the next one, we have the daily active users broke 2 million, so we're well over 2 million, and it's just doesn't look like it's slowing down for October into the ending of the quarter 4 here.
That's the graph you want to see when you're in crypto.
Right. Pretty much. The retention rate of your players. You can't really fudge these numbers, to be honest. But on to the next one. And then last but not least, we have just the Alexa rank 90-day trend. And we're still above 500 below 500 for internet engagement as far as the website. And the time spent on that website is roughly 20 minutes for the AxieInfinity.com marketplace. And to end it all off, and you guys could share your thoughts on whatever we just finished talking about, and including this. Although G-Host posted it, it's not specifically Axie Infinity related, but I just want to throw it in here at the end so we can maybe elaborate and share some ideas. That Steam recently just blocked all games built on blockchain and NFTs from their store, and G-Host as well as this was a big uproar here as well in the last week. Just happened I think the other day, and
NFT
EA
Twitter
Games
went crazy over this one.
Yeah, NFT Twitter definitely went crazy, but NFT Games came out just in case because they were getting bundled in with Steam as if they're not going to be supportive, and they came out. I think the CEO did on his Twitter account and said, "We are and will to have support for these types of games that are on the blockchain." EA Sports.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't want to get bundled in as a legacy, a dinosaur blockbuster type of situation, and now we have Sky Mavis, which is the hub. If you will go into Axie Infinity, the website, when you download the application to play the game on your desktop, it says Sky Mavis Hub, right? So just like Gala Games has their own ecosystem and their platform to bring on games, Sky Mavis, thinking as they did far into the future, they're going to be doing the same exact thing. So they're going to be multiple games within Sky Mavis, and Axie Infinity is just one of them. And we'll see this more and more often as the money is here for these types of businesses to start being the platform that Steam is for the legacy games. And the highlight, just the last comment here, the last highlighted one, if you can't see it that well, you could just visit Sky Mavis's Twitter or Steam's Twitter. It should be there, and you could see why. And they added it as the last one to their rules of why you shouldn't publish on Steam.
It blows my mind. Yeah, go ahead.
It was mind blowing to me just because obviously, coming in as crypto natives here, we're all about disruption of the powers that be and the status quo, and it's just interesting to see a big corporation like Steam completely just abdicate in the middle of this fight, right? I mean, their move was actually to start onboarding NFT gaming, and by shutting it out, they basically just they're done. It's over for them,
I have to wonder, is there more to it? Is there something behind it? Because as someone I've used Steam I have hundreds of games on the Steam platform. I've
me as well.
been an active part of and I love how progressive they've been. I mean, they also are the makers. They're part of the HTC Vive, so they're like way up there in the VR side of things. And so they've been progressive over the years. They're the ones that kind of set the stage for games to have communities that worked with the developers in the development process. So for them to all of a sudden make this pivot and say, okay, we're not going to support the growth of NFT and blockchain gaming, that is so strange, because it seems like the opportunity for them to adopt that, they could be the front runner. Yeah. So it's super strange.
And they really, they innovated in the game space. So, it used to be you went to Target or you went to Walmart and you saw your game box sitting on the shelf, and then Steam comes out and really pushes into the the cloud space as far as downloading games, and even now I think playing some of the games on the cloud. And for them to take this step feels very either they have something going on behind the scenes, maybe they're working on a different platform, but this is it doesn't make any sense to me, right? Why would you take advantage of a space that's obviously growing?
I mean, it kind of, for me, it just kind of goes back to the same old thing. I mean, onboarding crypto is a headache when you start thinking about, securities laws, tax liability, all these different things, because it's not really regulated yet. And I think it's scary for a lot of these corporations who are already at the top of the mountain, so to speak. It's kind of scary for them to try to, deal with this kind of stuff, knowing that it's going to be a liability for them, and they're going to have to do a lot of work in order to understand what's going on. So I think it's just the average knee-jerk reaction, just like Bank of America and Jamie Dimon, back in the day, saying they're going to fire anybody who trades crypto. Same kind of reaction. And then a couple of years from now, when they're getting beat to the floor by Gala Games and Sky Mavis and Star Atlas and all these things, they're going to try to come back, but it's going to be too late by then.
So do we have some of the titles that are going to be on Sky Mavis, or is it purely Axie at this time?
Just Axie for now. And when the SDK drops as well, there's going to be multiple different types of games that you could partake in that people create, individual developers. So that's going to be pretty interesting, and that'll give enough people time to play and earn and have fun up until the next, I guess, official release of a game. But it definitely is a shame when it comes to Steam, because they already had a couple titles, or just a few that were up and coming. But Age of Rust was one of them, which is a story-driven first-person action puzzle adventure set in a dark sci-fi future, right? And they, now you can't. It says it was coming soon, so it wasn't playable, but it was going to be one of the first NFT blockchain games that Steam was going to host, but not anymore.
Yeah, System Cert, I gotta kind of wonder a bit of the same. I mean, maybe their move is they're saying we don't want a whole bunch of blockchain games on the platform that we don't manage and have control. Maybe they're thinking ahead and trying to do something like what Gala is trying to become, and that is a game company that develops their own utility token, Gala, and then has games and game tokens. So maybe they're behind the scenes looking to create their own ecosystem. That could make sense if they're trying to shy away from just allowing any blockchain game on the platform. But who knows? It is a strange move without sharing any more news.
Right. We haven't even really seen the merger phase of this industry yet, right? We're seeing the startup phase. So you got the small houses. You've got Animoca Brands is another one that's kind of doing the same thing.
Yep.
And once you start to see these generate real revenue, and you're going to start seeing some of the bigger, maybe the AAA houses buying out some of these platforms.
Like EA?
Like EA, yeah. Right. I mean, it makes sense for EA to approach one of these platforms and have it baked in already and just layer in.
Yeah.
I think it'd be foolish to think that EA and others like it aren't already behind the scenes working on something big. We know that GameStop has even announced their own little digital games platform that they've been working on, and that showed up in in a web page at one point. So I think we're in the next 5 years or so, we're going to see stuff like we saw at the beginning of the MMO industry, right? Where you had your Ultima Onlines, your EverQuests, all that MMO space came and kind of grew, and I think we're going to see the same thing coming up here with blockchain gaming.
I think it'd be kind of cool. We should see to get Jane here on the show. That's she was working for Gala as the as their director of growth, something like that. And she's since gone on to other stuff, but she's still in that space. She came from EA, and so now that she's focusing on growth in the industry for blockchain gaming, she probably has a good view of what's going on in the landscape. So it might be fun to have her on here for a chat.
Yeah, and I think she went to Mythic. I think they have Block Party. Is it Blocko's Block Party? They've got some other IP. It's a good company that she went to. I'd love to hear what she's up to lately. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely reach out to her. I definitely feel like the floodgates are already opened, but the people just haven't seen the gates for as big as they are and started heading towards them when it comes to the gaming industry. So we're going to have a flood ton of, but I commend Gala Games as well as, Axie Infinity and all these others who aren't going to be sellouts, more or less, to these big industries like EA or these big legacy companies. Because if they're trying to build their own thing, then they're going to stick to it and not necessarily just get bought up. Hopefully that's not the case. So you could count on maybe the blue chips that are here, although they're doing things a little different than other companies in the blockchain space. with the NFT gaming space when it comes to sales of NFTs or quantities and what blockchain they're going to be on and all these different types of things. I think we'll still see them and they'll grow because that's what they want to do. They want to stand out and be their own entities outside of the legacy system. But then we'll see what happens as time goes on.
Yeah, we've had some healthy criticisms of Gala and justified criticisms of Gala, but they are doing their own way, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how the different companies and the different dev houses show up in their approach. Gala seems to be trying to move away from the impact of cryptocurrency. They're trying to mask what it is behind the scenes. But we know that crypto people are going into that space, so we have a lot of different questions than you might see from a typical gamer. But if you look at through the lens of a typical gamer, Gala might be approachable because they do a pretty good job of trying to make it feel more like a gaming system and less like a blockchain system.
The thing that remains unknown, though, is that do they really understand play to earn enough to bring that side to it? Because they're making the deals, they've got stuff in development, but yet to this day, maybe, I mean, in Towncoin, I mean, that's kind of like the first entry of being able to earn something in the game, but it's still not much about anything they put together feels like play to earn yet. So that's the part that still remains to be seen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not entirely convinced they're a play to earn company yet. I'm 100% with you on that one. And from the Towncoin or Townstar perspective, I just started looking into it this week. I've got a node. I've gotten a little bit of Towncoin because of that node. It seems to each Towncoin is 2 Gala. The only markets that you can really trade it on right now are Uniswap. So we're just starting to see what's happening there. And I think people are starting to figure out the strategies to actually earn. The unfortunate thing is it seems to be capitalizing on their dailies, which means buying more Gala assets to capitalize on the dailies. And then, so there's more revenue going into Gala, I think, coming out on the Towncoin from that, strategy.
No, you guys are both absolutely right. I was talking to a guy on Facebook who's earning, I guess, like $500 playing Townstar right now. But
that monthly, weekly, daily, like
I believe it was like daily. But he's such a whale. He's such a whale as far as having all these Vox and all these different things that he places out, and he places them out, and he earns his Towncoin from them. So he's making a couple thousand Towncoin per day or whatever, right? But that's not, the dream that I was originally sold with them as far as, your person from the third world country being able to earn an income. You know what I mean?
Right.
This guy.
So based on what you're saying is that he is able to do this because he is very asset heavy. So it's
Correct.
Based on the return he's getting for his investment. Yeah. So what you're saying is absolutely true. If you're coming from, like they mention quite often, some stories from people playing Townstar from the Philippines and other places. But yeah, if you're from there and you don't have, you're not stacked with assets, you're not going to make that kind of return.
That's the whole point. And then, when you compare it, ROI wise to something like Axie Infinity, where you can come in for, 1,000 to 2,000 and you're actually earning a decent amount per day, you're whatever, $10 a day, average right now. Right. I mean, that's a much bigger percentage than I think what this guy's getting off of his Townstar assets. So.
Yeah, I like the idea of how entitled we are, being so experienced in the crypto space all this time, and look at us demanding so many things from these companies who know much better than us. But if for all the new people who are coming into the space, if you stood around or if you go into the history books of what was announced by maybe Gala Games or a different company, we criticize Gala Games more often because they say things that draw you in, and just like the marketing of it all, and you get in there, but over time you see what the actions line up to be, and if you're giving dates or you're talking the good talk, you would want actions to be followed up. And we don't necessarily see that all the time with Gala Games, and yeah, they might be busy, but there shouldn't be any excuses if you have a whole team and you have a crap ton of money to allocate to these positions. So when it comes to Gala Games or any other games, definitely do your studying. Watch as much as you can and ask as many questions as you can, and to get a better grasp. Because if you spread yourself too thin on just too many projects, you might miss these announcements or these things that they promised or said they were going to do, or why they are who they are. And you might just think, oh, God, nothing's wrong with Gala Games. Nothing's wrong with Star Atlas. There's something wrong with all of them. You know, every company goes up and down, and they say things that they don't follow through on, or they charge things. They have prices for NFTs that a whole bunch of stuff. But if you're going to focus and hone in on one, make sure you do your due diligence and your homework so you don't feel like you're being taken advantage of.
No, I agree with all of you guys 100%. You know, I have 2 Gala nodes, and you know, it's they have the potential to be so much better as far as play to earn than they currently are. And that's the disappointment for me. I hope that they're gonna at some point, you know, move in that direction. And I think that it's the community's job in a big way to kind of push them that way. Because right now, if everybody's just kind of applauding what they've been doing, they're not going to have any motivation to move more in a play to earn aspect as opposed to a JPEG selling companies, which what they basically doing now, you know.
Yeah, you know, Jose Cardenas put up in the chat any Mirandus talks today, and I'll be honest, I go back to their Discord occasionally to see what's going on with Mirandus, and I haven't heard anything. I'm not sure if anyone else has heard any updates.
You know, yeah, I haven't either, and I do occasionally go in there just to check. And the truth is that for someone like many of us that are here on the show who have put in the assets, you know, there was a point in time where I probably had the neighborhood of 150,000 worth of Miranda specific assets. I think I'm down to about half of that now. And the truth is that I'm kind of sore with Gala over this, because I genuinely at this point believe that what they did with Mirandus was to raise capital for the rest of the things that they're doing. There's no way in hell that they're going to make a playable alpha this year. It just won't happen. And what's even more concerning is that they're not saying to the community, hey, here's where we're at. I just looked at their website the other day, and they still are listing job postings for basic stuff to get it started. I mean, that town hall, Town Coin and Town Star have progressed the way they have, with McCarthy having been the original developer of that. I'm assuming that's where his focus has been. So I kind of feel put off by the fact that I believed in what they said. I put in the money that helped to build that company, but yet we are not getting any words, any messages, anything that tells us about progress and about what to expect with development in Mirandus.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think out of the group of us, I was probably the one who was most cautiously optimistic about Gala and stood up for them in some of our previous debates. But I don't even go there anymore. I mean, I've got my assets. I see how much they go up in price every once in a while. They've not done anything that's next level to me. It's just dragging it along. And, you know, I'll be honest, I don't even follow them on Twitter that much anymore either. It's always feels like the same thing. It feels like marketing gimmicks. I need to see some real stuff. And so far, Townstar Coin isn't doing it for me. But I didn't go to Gala for Townstar either. So, and I don't play that type of game.
Right.
So to Bonafide's point, and to more or less wrap this up, if anyone doesn't have anything more else to say, is these companies, the point was, which I lost, but continue.
Well, I actually, Drill and Phil in chat brought something up that I don't think we talked about. He talked about the Galaverse in Vegas, and I got to be honest with you. I intended to go because I you know, there's still a piece of me that wants to see what they're going to do and what they're going to share. So I intended to go to the GalaCon.
Oh, okay. I got it.
Until they announced the prices for the tickets. It just felt like another money grab. I know they've got all these people who've got Gala stored up from their node earnings and things like that. But at the end of the day, the ticket prices were stupid. I would never spend that much money to go to a con. I went to Comic-Con and it was nowhere near as expensive as going to GalaCon. Did anyone see the prices?
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. But
what were they? Yeah, if anyone knows, I'd like to know. Share them on here. What were they?
I think the highest one was like $25,000 and the lowest one was like $1,500. It was absolutely stupid.
They had the names of what the avatars were as far as rarity levels. So it was like a legendary pass or ultra rare pass or, you know, rare. And then I don't know.
Ancient.
Yeah. Some stuff like that. Instead of maybe having some of the Gala node owners go in for free, or have a raffle that only a percentage, something that more creative, I think, not just here are the fixed prices, this is what you get, because soon after the prices were out, then you have benefactor tweeting saying, hey, maybe we could, I don't want to do this, but maybe we can put up, we didn't take the photo, but we could pull it up next week if that's the case. But basically benefactor was saying, hey, if the community wants a little change, I wouldn't want to do that, but hey, we'll put up for a vote to say to maybe decrease the prices or change something of the sort where there's more people who will be able to come, because more or less the prices were pretty outrageous compared to any other event that's been taking place or that's coming up for network gatherings with Solana and Lisbon, or just why not free? You get way more people coming to support you, and then you can sell a bunch of stuff there.
That's a good point. The VIP ticket for Solana's event in Lisbon is $4,000. It's $1,000 for the regular ticket, $4,000 for VIP. And Galacon, I mean, with what they're doing, they should have done something like, hey, if you are a node owner, which means you've spent some money with them, you get a free ticket. If you have more than X, if you own a land deed in Mirandus, that's maybe Hamlet or something, or Outpost or higher, you get to come for free. Acknowledge the people who've helped you grow to get to this point.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly it. I mean, the people who are doing well in the NFT space as well as the NFT gaming space are the people who are giving value back to their original supporters who bought NFTs. That's how you build the value of these things up. If you buy a Gala NFT and they don't put value back into it by providing the kind of thing you're talking about, Jesse, with, hey, you're going to come to GalaCon for free. Hey, we're going to give you free access, during the show. We're going to give you a special, whatever, another drop or whatever. They're not doing these kind of things, and that's the kind of thing that's been disappointing, because it's not that hard to do. And it doesn't cost them anything to do it, So
So I remember my point, and to Bonafide saying before we just finished this last topic was the community needs to step up, right? So when you have a community seeing these things take place, we see this happening in the cracks of the Gala or the Gala Games ecosystem, where at some point the line in the sand is crossed for a lot of these people who've been desensitized to just the methods of marketing when it comes to Gala Games, but to us, if you had exposure to any other games or even generative art projects with their own Discord communities and you follow on any network, there's going to be way more incentives that are had for those types of people, whether it's a project starting out or even now with the community itself of these projects incentivizing people to create art. There's competitions where in the Axie right now, one of them is going off for Axie Infinity. A community member is putting up over 1,000 AXS token, and there's going to be winners, a tier of winners for art projects, and it's incentivizing, cultivating that community strength, engagement. Right? There's things that are happening outside of a system that already were doing it from the beginning, which was helping the community, the earlier investors, right? And sometimes these projects, even like Axie Infinity, when they first had their costs and prices for their chests for land and Axies at first, it wasn't an exorbitant amount. You weren't breaking the bank just to get in. Some people have this argument against Star Atlas saying these auctions for 20 million starting for these Titan ships, or just the ships in general that you're buying now, Generation 1, they're worried it might be a rug pull. I get all these conversations that I have of, there's other projects who aren't pricing their NFTs at such a high amount, and they look at how successful they are. But why are these projects doing the exact opposite, where you're paying so much upfront and maybe not ever going to see a return for the next year? And then if there is a mini game coming out, it's going to be a very elementary game, because it was so early, but you'll still be maybe able to make it back depending on how active you are. So it's a whole melting pot of different methods and ways to get a community to grow or to help support the existing investors, depending on the language you want to use. It's just very interesting, but that's why you should all spread yourselves out, not so thin, but just the blue chips at least learn about them and check up on them, and maybe dip your toes in them too. The community,
Say honestly, that's the thing that I like about doing this show with all of you guys, is that we are involved in different projects. We have some that are our favorites, but we're still also paying attention to the landscape, where we have our ear to the ground and we're looking at how things are developing across the board. We get to see a variation of models, some that we like, some that are better than others, some that are pioneers, and they're just doing the best that they can. And then they learn as they go and they adapt and they adjust. So I think that our interest and focus here as the Metaverse Nomads, and as you can see there on the screen, Metaverse News, is really looking to see what unfolds as the Metaverse develops across all companies and everyone's approach and everyone's angle and all the different things they're doing to contribute and grow and as they all learn in the process. So, yeah.
Yeah, just to kind of co-sign on what both of you guys just mentioned. I mean, I was actually very proud of us as the Metaverse Nomads, how we were upfront with Gala when we saw some practices that we didn't really appreciate, and how we were able to go on ahead and pivot our attention to other games. And it's like you guys mentioned, I mean, a lot of us are still heavily invested in Gala games, Miranda's, etc. And we'll be happy to come back, you know, if they start to change these practices and start giving them attention once again, if they start taking care of their supporters, taking care of the player base, which is what we're all here for, play to earn, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And $50,000 con tickets are not taking care of your
crazy.
player base. You're just buying access there, and frankly, with the way they show up in Discord, if they show up the same way in public, what are you really buying? You're buying a bunch of hype.
We just recently saw one of their biggest supporters actually put out a video kind of calling them out a little bit. You know, Jake over at On-Chain Gaming, who openly shared that a big portion of how he makes money within his business over there is by the fact that they were promoting and creating content that was supporting Gala, and now he's concerned about some potential changes over there. Yeah, I'd be curious to see where that's going to go. Honestly, from my end, being that I didn't do a lot of promotion, I'm like, that part doesn't bother me any. In fact, if they make that change as just a node owner, I'll get more. So I don't have the same skin in the game that he does. But it's just interesting that, you know, yeah, he was one of their biggest supporters from the start. And so he even has some of his own concerns.
Yeah, shout out to Jake with On-Chain Gaming, man. Fight the good fight, brother. Yeah.
So we got that little piece from iGuard in chat there. You know, he put some boxes in and you can stake them apparently and do some passive income. So he's making about 340 Gala a day with 2 boxes. And that's what, about $27 a day. I don't know how much his boxes cost right now, but I mean, if there are passive earning opportunities there. I'm certainly not discounting that. I haven't looked at the price of boxes in a while.
Didn't you grab a couple boxes, Jesse? What was the price?
Oh, man, it's a sore subject, the box thing now that comes up. Because I was one of the people who got screwed over. I had or a place, I had failed payments, all that stuff. And you know what? With all the talk that Gala said about making that right, I have not seen anything. And I did go through all of the processes. I submitted everything to their Google Docs, and I haven't seen jack.
Yeah,
so there we have it.
Yeah. And just for to kind of cap that off, the daily reward is around $27 that he's getting out of that. So in fairness to that earning play. So if you have a lot, I mean, like I said, there's some passive earning plays there.
Yeah, the one guy I was talking about that I was talking to on Facebook, he has like several boxes. He has the fountains and all these things, all these assets that were coming out over all this time. He has a good chunk of them. So yeah.
And for the record, sorry, Bonafide, but for the record, I can't speak for anyone of us specifically, but knowing what I know from having our relationships up until now with each other, the emotions of investing personally are not there for me. When it comes to Gala games, I could see them being successful. I could see the whole space is growing as the floodgates are going to get bombarded with money and people. So if Gala games went to zero tomorrow, it sucks ass. But it's not going to necessarily make or break me because you, like any investor, even in the legacy world of stocks, you spread yourself out and you're not having all your eggs in one basket. So, right. So as investors, although we are hardcore gamers and we have been for the most part of our whole lives, you know, investing is a whole nother ball game. And now we're seeing the overlap of these two things where you get a lot of emotions in video games. And maybe if you're a sophisticated investor, there's no emotions. But now how do you differentiate those two types of that dynamic is what everyone's learning and going through for the next couple of years, right? If they haven't already gone through that, to become a grounded individual when it comes to just research to study as an investment in these games, but then also looking forward to play and then, you know, potentially get angry from losing your ship as it gets burned in the deep space region of Star Atlas, which nobody would want.
I think that depends on how willing you are. I think it depends on how willing you are to flip your NFTs, right? So I did about once every couple months, I go through and check all my crypto holdings, including NFTs, to kind of get a baseline of price. I was pretty surprised at how much of my portfolio is sitting in NFTs right now. It's way more than I thought.
Yeah.
And we've been FOMOing out on some other smaller projects on the regenerative art side, and as a console, we've all kind of gone heavy on some of those. So there's a lot there. Jesse, do you have something to say?
Oh yeah, I'm with you there. I was thinking about that today. In fact, I was just surprised at the fact, but I feel good about that in a way, because a lot of before NFTs and gaming, a lot of the projects that I was involved in, I was more focused on the token growth and what was happening there. And with the NFT space, it feels good to be investing in projects that I'm more intimately connected with. So I feel like a supporter of helping to make that company grow, much more so than when it was just a token, which still, though, I still am like, all right, get rational, Jesse, and start to balance out your portfolio a little bit here. Drill and Phil here, you asked the question, are land claims, I'm assuming you're speaking about land deeds within Mirandus, maybe? Because that's what we've been talking about? Or is it Star Atlas?
I'm pretty sure it's Star Atlas because it's land claims. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, if you could clarify on that. With regard, sure, on both. Land claims are not available yet for Star Atlas, but they are absolutely, based on everything that's been shared with us so far, all the tips and hints and everything else, it is absolutely going to be worth your while. In fact, it is mentioned within Star Atlas that being a landowner is a big deal. At least the clues that we've received so far. And it's going to be auction based. I've read a couple of things. I keep going back, revisiting the economic paper and the white paper to see what kind of new clues I can learn. And each time I read it and dovetail that onto a town hall or some other information, and it does kind of shine through a bit more new information about things to consider. And land being one of them is going to be a big deal, because you have to have land to be able to have a say with the governance token of Polis. In other words, you can't just have Polis staked and then feel like, hey, you know what, you have the rule of the land and the rule of that governance, and to have the vote the same way. You have to be a landowner. So they are tying the two together.
It really is a double-edged sword, that system, right? Because that way, if the big money wants to come in and put money into Polis to make money, maybe some passive earnings, if they have to own land as well, that means they have to manage the land, which means there's less opportunity for people to come in and just kind of throw money at something and earn passively. But the plus side of that is those people who do it actually have to play, or at least they have to pay someone to play for them. So there is some utility being created by that mechanism. I think the last thing I saw from Wagner inside chat around this is they're still working on it. They've got economists involved in the process, which we all think is fantastic. And I expect that we'll probably hear some things. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about the mini game coming up, so I won't go too deep there. Yeah. Before I move into our main event today, Star Atlas, is there anything else anybody wants to bring up around the metaverse? All right, then. Well, let's first look at where we are on the leaderboards today. We've seen a little bit of transition. I think there's some interesting numbers popping up here. And maybe we can help enlighten some people with why we think some of these numbers are the way they are. So at the top, we've got the Mud territory. Their top wallet looks to be about 138,000 USDC. They have around almost 7,000 players. Oni's up behind them. This is the one where I think people might get a little confused. The top wallet's at around 864,000. We can talk about in a moment who we think that is. They have around 8,000 players, and I think those two numbers are linked, in my personal opinion. We'll get to that in a second. And then at the third place, falling back into third place, is Ooster with $190,000 top wallet and just over $7,000 players. So what's your guys' perspective on where the leaderboards are right now?
Well, one important thing to note about the leaderboards for sure is that they're off. Those aren't the actual numbers. I noticed this strange thing happening a couple days ago, maybe about 3 days ago, in fact. And that is that Star Atlas has taken away the top ships. The Guardian and the Threpid do not factor into these numbers right now. In fact, if you go to the leaderboard for individuals and you click on any individual in the top ranks, it will not show either of those ships. And so I've also seen that it removes it completely from my total. So these numbers are really askew right now because those two ships, which are significantly priced, 9,000 and 30 some odd thousand, are not included in these numbers.
Yeah, and one thing that also is not included is if you have any Soul, Polis, Atlas in your wallet, that is not included. It's just the NFT total at the moment.
Yeah, I've seen my OPOD pop in and out of the earnings, so I know that there's some discrepancies there in overall prices. I think individually that makes sense, but when you look collectively, it's happening to everybody, right? So
Yes. Mhm.
you're backing those out of all the factions. I think what we're seeing by the nature of that glitch or whatever it is we're not seeing the true value of what's actually in there.
Right.
But proportionately, it should be similar, right?
Right. Yep.
I think, and maybe Jesse, maybe you could add to this because we've been talking internally around, using hardware wallets and things like that. And I'm just curious if we're capturing all the wallets. We know that there's a section of wallets out there that right now that haven't claimed a faction yet, so those wouldn't be showing up here. But do you think that the hardware wallets and kind of people moving and adjusting into 3 wallets or 3 factions is having a play here?
I think a little bit. So we know that the guild AEP, so Alpha Industries, has encouraged their people, or not necessarily encouraged them, but informed them that they are a multi-faction guild. And so the strategy that a lot of them are using, and it's probably a strategy that many other individual players and guilds are using as well, and that is having multiple wallets. So when you see the player count there, that player count isn't necessarily restricted to an individual player. That could be a single player in each faction. It could be a single player with multiple wallets in each faction, or it could be just a player with a single wallet in one faction. The impact of the hardware wallets, and I'm one of the people that chose to go that route. When you have a substantial amount of assets, I wanted to make sure that they were protected, especially because we're in this strange world now where you can literally look up people on the leaderboard. And while you don't know at this point who they are as an individual, you can see wallet addresses that can then become targets. So for me, it just made sense to go the route of a hardware wallet. However, that can lead to some potential restrictions. In fact, I have a question in for Michael Wagner now in the Foundation Room chat, which asks this question. It says that, hey, many of us went the route of the hardware wallet. Do we run the risk of having some significant disadvantages down the road? We know that the things that can't happen now, like you can't update your avatar and you can't update a badge on your game profile, which is fine. That's minimal. I don't need to have that on there. And through the mini game, that's fine. But will we all of a sudden find ourselves in a place later where, because we have a hardware wallet, we have some restrictions that make us want to actually create a new account? But if there are things that are account bound, like they talked about, the pilot license and the captain's license that we're about to get, those could be things that are account bound. If you raise the skills of your player on the skill tree, which is going to be an important factor of the game, that's going to be account bound. So you can't later decide that, oh, this hardware wallet thing is too difficult. Let me send over my assets to another wallet that's the software-based wallet. So I think it's important to find these things out now. My guess is that to do right, because they're a company that has already demonstrated they do right by the community, is that they will probably create some type of bridge that allows you to make good on that, to port your character kind of thing. Still waiting for a response on that, but I think it's an important one to get an answer to.
Yeah, he did talk about on the town hall how they're trying to sort out a bridge, as you said, but nothing official yet, and we all are waiting. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah,
Ray.
I wanted to make a point here and ask a question to you all. So, do you think that the Guardian and the Thripid prices are not registering for like on purpose? You think, and then if so,
Yes.
For what reason?
Oh, don't know the reason, but I was trying to speculate on this as I was thinking about why first it was one ship and then it was 2, because for a while, first it was just the Guardian that was gone out of my lineup when you see like the top assets on your profile,
Right.
and then the Threpid went away. And so now it's both of those. So the highest ship will show up now for anyone's account is the Bomber.
Right.
And so my guess is that they've taken it, it's not off chain, but they're doing something perhaps to it. Because we do know that Danny, Buntius, has been in the process of making adjustments to things, and they're trying to figure out what the levels are going to be for how many components, how many modules, how many crew, all of these different things. So maybe that plays a role in why they're taking certain ships offline while they make those adjustments. Don't know, but that's my only speculation.
You bring up a good point. I hadn't considered the idea that maybe they're somehow deregistering the NFT to make changes and re-registering it, or maybe the assets that are attached to that address. That makes complete sense. It would explain why my OPOD has shown up sometimes and not, especially since they've started adding kind of the crew updates and the component and the all those updates that you can see on the NFT now.
Yeah, I was going to say that just might be the reason, but my first thought for why I asked the question was they did this so that the numbers are not so exorbitant for when new players are coming in, and not everyone knows how to check what each player has individually in their wallet. But if they just look at the numbers, they're going to say, holy crap, how is this? This is like a play to win type of game, because now you have these people with like hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars worth of assets when they can only afford one. So how are they going to be competitive, not understanding or have read the white papers? So maybe it's like fudging the numbers in a sense, but on purpose, which was my original thought of like, okay, so now you got people coming in and it's still a reasonable range that they can feel like they could come in and be as they're learning, you know, to be a, but yeah, that was
in terms of those numbers. I tell you a big change that I believe is on the horizon. The moment that we get guild registration, and the moment that they're able to actually put into play that push button DAC, you know, a smart contract that allows anyone to kind of choose from a menu of items to create their own DAO, but in the game as a DAC, then you're going to see all of the rest of the remaining ships that are listed at the MSRP fly off the shelves, and you're going to see the price of all of the ships, even on the large ones, go up exponentially as groups of people are now able to pool their assets to purchase these things.
right.
We've had some dialogue behind the scenes on the benefits of individual ownership versus, you know, guild ownership of assets. I lean into, well, just from an ideology perspective, I lean into the individual ownership of assets, collectively working towards an outcome. Because it seems to me that with the exception of groups who can only pool like $10 each, maybe you'll get 500 people to buy one ship. Most people right now in this space are buying their fleet of ships with the intention of making money on them, and then indirectly benefiting their DAC through taxes. What's interesting is specifically with the ONI is the numbers are a little bit askew because we do have somebody who looks to have been buying a lot of assets, or at least bragging about buying a lot of assets,
right?
With the intention of doing some sort of scholarship program. What do you guys think about that?
I would like to just mention how, just like in the real world, if this is a simulation of the real world, you're the last person to use the money you've worked for. So the government takes their share, the bills that you owe, whatever it is, you're the last one. If it was dripping down the mountainside, right, you'll get whatever's left over after everyone gets their fair share. So if all these individuals who are putting into current DAOs that exist within these guilds, what does it really look like? Even within the game, you'll be taxed by your faction, right? So it's just like after all the bills are paid, what are you really coming out with if 10 people put in, or 500 people put in $10 for one ship? You have to divide it. So depending on how a guild is going to work and how much money they're going to have when, like Jess said, when it really comes out, when you could start buying ships and they'll fly off the market with all the money that they accumulated in their DAO. Well, you know, to each their own, but it'll have to be worked out. But I don't see it working out that great for those types of individuals who think putting all their money in a pool to buy, you know, any ship smaller than a Titan or maybe a commander ship or a mothership, if they could even get there with collectively with all their members. So that's just something that I thought about. And yeah.
Can you imagine if there was all of a sudden a small maintenance fee assessed on all of it?
There you go. So to top it all off, and in addition, Rome is not objective to a DAO. There's infrastructure already there, although everything is in beta, and that's why we see Star Atlas, in my opinion, doing it almost for everyone, because it's going to get their game kickstarted when it comes to this, because they have seen, and it was probably mentioned a lot by community members who are starting their own DAOs. You know, like there's hurdles that you have to go through, and it takes away from learning and sharing and helping the team market their own game. So, you know, that's another thing that I considered, which is like, yeah, Rome will have a DAO because in deep space, that's where your DAO is going to be needed. Other than that, there's no rush to make one. And then to have people's money locked up, they could have been working and saving and take their money back out to buy their own ship. So you're going to see a decline in the DAOs and the amount of money that they have locked up there already, unless you can't take it out. And then you're going to feel, sour about your money being locked up in a guild, even when you want to leave it to join Rome, maybe.
Not even locked up though, but there's also the friction, right? So you've got the friction of getting your money from your DAO into the Star Atlas metaverse, and then the friction of getting it back. And by friction, I mean costs, right?
Right.
So if Star Atlas builds that DAC within the game, it's using Atlas, it's using Polis, there's not a lot of transfer fees. But if you've got a ETH-based DAO, and we know what ETH gas prices are right now, they're a joke. And the idea of moving your money from an ETH-based DAO out of the DAO into Star Atlas to buy assets and then moving that money back, you've got a whole nother level of fees that you're going to have to pay just to get that money moving. So it doesn't make any sense to me. I applaud Star Atlas for thinking about this and working with the community. It's been very clear from all the town halls that there's a group of people out there who want scholarship opportunities. And want the ability to do that from within the game. And the better Star Atlas does doing that for the player base, the more, I guess, fair the community will be in general.
Yeah. The thing that remains unknown is what functionality will be available in the DAX. But it sounds like the company that they are working with as a third party that's helping with this, we're going to see it roll out in the Master DAO. So we'll get a sneak peek at what some of that functionality looks like. The thing that kind of throws me off a little bit is the number of guilds that are out there right now that feel compelled to have a DAO and also to create all of these alliances. We don't yet have a DAO, and we don't have any alliances. And the reason that we don't is because nobody knows what that means yet. And so it kind of comes across as doing a lot of busy work. And so you're doing things that you'll have to undo later once you have more information. And so it can create more work for you at that point rather than saying, okay, we have new information now. We have the DAC. Here's what its functionality is. Now we can tell the people that we have in the wings that are investors saying we want in, here's how we can best serve you and serve what you're about to invest with us. Here's the alliances we're going to form now because we understand what it means to have an alliance within the game. We understand the significance of through gameplay, how that plays out. And so therefore it now makes sense. So I think there's a lot of premature things that are taking place and happening that unfortunately are going to work against some of the guilds because they're going to have to undo those things because they won't serve their members the best way.
And they'll either have to undo them with good intentions or just it'll self-destruct. I think right now we're before game one of the Squid Game, right? Everybody knows each other. We're talking to each other. Everyone's nice. There's a bunch of people out there who think that this game is going to be kumbaya. It's going to be this utopian space. And I'm here to tell you, human nature will not work that way. We will find that there will be people at each other's throats. There will be all the animosities you see in other games where there's a multiplayer component. Now you've got money. I mean, when somebody burns a $10,000 ship and somebody thinks they were somehow treated unfairly in this combat, it's going to create some real tension. And then you'll start to see those alliances reform as people have different goals and expectations. And eventually, for the top end or the late game guilds, that's where the real alliances are going to start to show up, because that's when the real end game power plays are going to be needed to have those alliances. But up front, it's like you said, Jesse, it's all just pen pals, I think is what you called it at one point.
It's going to be funny because the blockchain doesn't have any emotions. So when your ship goes, it's like there's no customer support for you to call.
Right.
There you go. Wagner will block you and you as quick as the light shines on our faces. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is our deck. So that's going to be for deep space purposes.
Yeah. And so I guess for all the guilds out there who feel like you have to have a DAO to be caught up, I think taking it from us, a guild who's pretty big in the space, let's see what comes before we decide all this other stuff that we need to have. And for those of you who like to go online and brag about how big your DAO is, I don't know if that really gives you an in-game advantage yet. We'll see. We'll see if it stands the test of time.
Yeah, people are going to be able to identify the holes in the system if there are any when they roll it out. And who knows, there could be just like a service provided to the community that would fit that. So there's no need to do it now. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point, Fancy, as well. I think going back to something we said about the whales and blockchain, there's going to be somebody who puts together a whale watch, right? Who watches the top 10 wallets on this game to look for some sort of competitive advantage, or maybe just a competitive defense, right? If you know that this wallet is working over in this area and you can ascertain that information through the blockchain, then you're going to have the ability to maybe go someplace else or know where you need to go to get the best resources, things like that.
I would like to note that to play devil's advocate, it would be great for some guilds to have a DAO made in the event that Star Atlas, trips over a little rock or two and they have to delay, or it's not functioning the correct way, the DAO that they're creating for everyone. So in that event, then the DAO that you had could just take its place for a short while. So there might be some utility for a DAO that has money in it already for certain guilds, but it's not going to be that long until Star Atlas just has a functioning system that makes everyone else's DAO obsolete, unless there's something particularly different that it's supplying to the people who are giving money to that DAO and the treasury fund for the ship. And all I could think of, you want to accumulate as much money as possible to buy the biggest ship so you can get out there farther than anyone else, because that's where you're going to make the most money. And if these are investors throwing their money in, not going to play themselves, then sure, you're going to be able to afford these commander ships hand over fist, and then you could just have those assets managed, which Rome is going to do. So if you're an investor out there and you come across one of these videos, or someone that that's a part of Rome or interested in Rome, chat it up and tell them to communicate or contact one of the council members, and we could definitely have a conversation. So
But kind of like here, like Space Grandpa, do you guys have a hermit drunkard squad in Rome for the people who don't like squads and like to fly alone on their guardians? We absolutely do. So hit us
Rome
up.
is your home.
Yeah.
There's a home. I like the word drunkard anyway, so I think that makes you an in right there.
Yeah.
Right.
As well as hermit, right? So.
Yes.
All right. So we had some things go on this past week, some good stuff. We had the town hall. I was out of commission for the week doing some vacation stuff, so I'm a little bit behind. However, I know we learned some good things. We also have some slides to talk about where the game is at and kind of bring people along the journey that we've already been coming along. Before we get into the slides, why don't we just talk about the town hall? What was your first impressions of the town hall?
Well, I mean, it was cool that Rome had the opportunity to kind of share a bit about our guild. That's really the first time in a public forum, other than on this show, where we've shared a bit more about who we are, what we're looking for, what we plan to do, some of our plans, that kind of thing. Talking about how we were able to introduce. By the way, we haven't really even talked about on this show. We need to have them on here at some point, but. Manu and Koji-san, two well-known content creators from Argentina and Venezuela, who collectively between the two of them have over 1 million subscribers on their channels. They're now Rome is now home for them, as well as inviting in folks in the Spanish-speaking communities, which ours now in Rome is growing substantially, for folks in their communities that want to participate as a Roman. As we enter Star Atlas. So that was a cool announcement that we were able to make on the town hall.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic news. I think one of the things that I've always thought would be a beneficial thing for any guild is to be completely international. And with that comes a little bit more complexity in how you set up a guild, right? Because you have people who are not English speakers, obviously in the Spanish guild section. And then we've already identified our people who are bilingual and can help kind of bring people along on that journey, which is fantastic. We're already there. We've got the luxury of having two big names in that space, bringing their people with them. And I would say to anybody who's listening is we're open to other opportunities as well for people who have a gaming culture that want to join the Star Atlas metaverse and don't quite have an on-ramp and want to come talk to Rome and see how that looks. I would love to have every continent represented in Rome. I think nothing speaks to Rome bigger than that international presence that we have the capability to do.
Well, three of us here on this show we're in 3 different countries right now. So we already got some good global representation.
Co-signing on that, yeah. I mean, we talked about that back at the beginning. I mean, when you're playing a competitive MMO of this nature, it's key to have people on all times of the day from different perspectives. I mean, that's the most powerful thing you can do. And our doors are open. We're taking in everybody from everywhere. We want all of you.
Yeah, and just the enthusiasm we're already seeing from this new. I guess we're bringing them in as a legion. This new legion we're bringing in. The enthusiasm, and I even see some of our non-Spanish speaking members trying to go to Google Translate and get involved and still be a part of the whole synergy that's going on. But it's just great to see so many people from another culture outside the English speaking culture that are so enthusiastic about games, and they really come from countries where they can benefit from the Star Atlas metaverse. So we're seeing people who are coming as owners of assets, but we're also seeing some of the kind of the quote unquote scholarships come as well. Ray, you were kind of instrumental in this relationship. Anything for you to say?
Yeah, so I initially met both Koji-san and Manu in person when I went to a Axie Infinity event that took place in New York City, as where I reside, 2 weeks ago. And although it was an Axie Infinity community event, there was a lot of people there not knowing anything about Axie who were interested in blockchain gaming in general. So as Rome is growing and as excited as we are here, and as I was on that day for both Axie Infinity and Star Atlas, I talked a lot about Star Atlas, and Koji-san and Manu, they were interested in the game, and I was an abundant encyclopedia at the event for them to read from. And so from that point on, we just continued building our relationship behind the scenes, and we came to an agreement where we're going to work together and build Rome and its South American Legion. So once we get into deep space or space in general in the Star Atlas, then hit the ground running. So it was pretty exciting to make those connections and to represent Rome, as we all are extensions of the guild, as we are our own families. So you want to represent it in a way that shows your loyalty and honor, and what everything is gonna take place in the future and what it looks like. So I was pretty excited about that.
I think one of the other benefits that I've seen by having, even with the international presence we have now, is somebody's always available, right? There's always somebody from a different time zone who's on to help answer questions, and there's these little groups building up. And even within the guild, our squads are building up their own little cultures. And some of them are geographic based and some of them are profession based. But it's really interesting to see how we're going to have these little mini cultures, some a little bit more aggressive, some a little bit more utilitarian. But they're building their own kind of camaraderie and esprit de corps within their teams, and they're really loyal to their teams. It's really interesting to see how it's developing inside the guild.
And just one real quick, a hat tip to Fancy Hat here. For those of you that are already in the guild, you probably are aware that he's probably the most front-facing of all the consuls. He spends a tremendous amount of time answering questions and taking care of people within there. While there's so many different facets to running a guild, and so from a high level and many of the other things that we're doing behind the scenes with partnerships and working on marketing and a whole bunch of other things, so definite hat tip to Fancy Hat for being the one that's most boots on the ground, really in there connecting with all of our members on a daily basis. So that's another reason we love to invite you to this show. It's an opportunity for you to hear from all of us collectively at once. With a lot of guilds, you don't have that opportunity. As I mentioned in the town hall, most have one leader, perhaps two. And as you can see here, we're from all different walks. We have different thoughts, views, and ideas about things that we share here. And so we believe that that's an ideal arrangement for leadership within a guild.
And I would like to include, that goes without saying, all of our lieutenants, our squad leaders. They're phenomenal. Too many to list here. But an idea I just had was we can have a Star Wars credit beginning scene of all their names. So at the end of our shows, if you were interested in Rome, you could reach out to also a lieutenant or a squad leader instead of just a council member. So you have more avenues for communication that would also help the same way we all would. And that would be pretty cool. So you see a whole list of our lieutenants and squad leaders, and maybe some honorable citizens who are on their way. for promotion. It would
Yeah.
be pretty cool to see.
I love this comment here. Fancy's like a bot, active 24/7.
He is, though. There's the truth there.
He doesn't sleep. He doesn't eat.
That's great.
And he does it with one hand, as far as I remember.
That's all healed up now. It's good.
Hand is healed up. For those of you just tuning in, it's a hand injury. That's what we're referring to here.
Yes.
I didn't even catch that.
Hey, it looks like we've got a shout out from Ultra, who's out there listening. Couldn't be on the podcast today. He says, "Hello, Metaverse Nomads." Ultra's
Right
got
on.
some
What's
things
up?
he's dealing with. He'll be back with us. You know, this is the type of podcast when we have 6 of us where we can kind of filter in and out and take care of personal stuff as well. So yet another benefit. Shout out to Ultra there. Any other thoughts about the town hall that came out? I mean, I know we're going to cover some things here, but about the size, about, you know, what they talked about. Are the town halls going in the direction we want them to go?
So I think people did want a bit more information, or at least the date, and there was a bit of salt in the chats, but I'm sure we're going to get a date soon. I did like how they explained the name Score. I can't remember exactly what it was. Ship configuration.
Commission. Ship
Yeah.
commission
Yeah,
on remote expedition.
that sounds right.
All right. Well, I haven't had a chance to listen to the full thing yet. I did hear a lot of good feedback around Jesse's presentation. So hats off to Jesse for kind of representing Rome in the little guild section. And just, you know, to everybody who's listening, stop by Rome, gorome.io. We'd love to have you. The numbers of people who are coming into the Discord is really impressive. Really excited to see all the new faces, not only with our international friends, but also other people who are just getting exposed to Star Atlas and really starting to look at the pecking order of the guilds that are showing up. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about Star Atlas versus any other game that I've ever seen is the communities they're advertising and marketing themselves in ways that I've never seen. Right? I've never seen a guild go out and make a Twitter account and try to build fans that way, or do a podcast, or build a wiki. Well, a wiki, I guess, would be one of the more foundational things you might see from a guild. But there is a full, these are decentralized autonomous corporations, and there's full marketing teams working some of these, or at least they're working as a full marketing team. What do you guys think about how guilds are showing up in Star Atlas versus other games you've played?
I'm excited about it, and I'm also pretty confident about it, simply because the digital marketing is what I've been doing for 2 decades. So I kind of feel like it's definitely in my wheelhouse and gives us a significant advantage. But I like how that, because what is going to take place in the metaverse is going to have real world implications. It's a big deal. It matters. People are going to have to guilds are going to need to start treating their guild like a business. And so they're building a community. They're doing some marketing. They're using social channels and other mediums to be able to attract people, to demonstrate value. Here's what we're about. Here's what we offer. Here's what we're looking for. Here's what the relationship can be. And so I'm excited to see more of this, because it's another element that brings an element of realism to the game experience, because of what's happening outside of the game that is also going to play a role inside the game. And we'll be doing that in game too. There's going to be marketing happening outside, and there's going to be marketing happening within the game.
What do you think that's going to look like? Because we've talked loosely about, commercial marketing, but what would the devs need to do to kind of make the external experience show up on the inside? Do we need messaging boards? Do we need radio stations? What do you think, from a theory craft perspective, would kind of add more to the metaverse itself?
It's going to be all the things that we've seen in all the sci-fi movies, going back to Blade Runner, where you're walking down the street and you see illuminated billboards and 3D images there will be brands, there will be a radio station, there will be Metaverse Nomads will, the moment that we have the opportunity to do so, stream live inside the game. And that'll be both, like things that are happening around the metaverse, and then also things that are happening within the world, the metaverse that is Star Atlas. So yeah, I'm looking forward to us being able to do that. And I think we're going to see lots of that. We're going to see so many interesting things play out. And these are things that are written into the white paper. I just went back and read it today, and it was talking about user-generated content, about how that's one of the places that things will go. People will be able to create skins. Some of those skins will be representative of their brand. We're already seeing that now with all the tags. Look how many Soul tags and FTX tags, for the jackets that are available. People will eventually be able to do that for their own brand, the same way that Atari spent as much as they did within Decentraland to get a plot of land there, because they see the potential future value of a place that you can hold attention span and be where the people's eyes and thoughts are. It's going to be a new way of marketing. How that plays out, it'll be different than what we've seen before. Just the same way it was a challenge for businesses to initially understand how to utilize social media. Mm-hmm. How you market in the metaverse is going to be different than how you market on social media now and how you've marketed in print, television, and radio in the past. It's going to be different because you need to meet people exactly how they show up and why they're there.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how it shows up. Externally, you're bound by regulation. You're bound by different governments within the metaverse. That none of that's in place. The only limitation is the technology. So my curiosity leads to, in 5 to 10 years, are we going to see governance lead to regulations on how people show up? Is there going to be, for example, a propaganda channel where guilds are putting out Air Rome, for example, right? Where they put out propaganda into the metaverse, and will that come under, some sort of regulation that's done through governance? This is an opportunity where there's no government right now. We're really starting out from let's see how it shows up. And my personal belief is human nature is going to show up very quickly. But to what degree is governance going to be there to help curb the impact of human nature? Are we going to see kind of over the next 5 years, these internal sets of regulations and rules and laws show up?
I have a couple thoughts on that, but I feel like I've been talking a lot, so I want to hear someone else.
No, by all means, I have nothing to say for now.
So here's what comes to mind for me. You're right. Human nature is going to play out. I've been reading this fantastic book, which is something like 1 Billion Wicked Thoughts. It's about all that they've learned about sexual behavior and thoughts and things that they've never been able to learn before because they're learning it from the internet, as where before, you couldn't really do a thing where people are going to be honest with you if you ask them questions. So now they have this whole wheelhouse of information, this whole plethora of information to kind of do this research on. Human behavior is going to play out how it plays out, even in the metaverse. But what I think is fantastic about it is that the way that this is staged, you have different tiers of governance. At the very beginning with the Master DAO, we're going to be able to essentially influence the game. So it's kind of from the outside looking in. It's kind of like it's God mode. It's basically, how do we want the game to develop? Then the layers come within the game. So like you put on the VR headset, now you're in the game world, Ready Player One. And now you can apply your governance to a faction. So that's the next level. So enough people can get together and dictate what a faction focuses on. Do we want to be a warring faction? So we're going to focus on defense. We're going to focus on offense. We're going to give low taxes to military shipbuilders and things that are combat based. Or are you a faction that, we want to support R&D. So we're going to make it almost no taxes paid on things that be able to help the research and development side and technology grow easily, because that's one of the things you do with taxes. You either make things easy or you make it a little bit more difficult. You give incentives, kind of like Ireland. That's the reason you've got Google and Facebook and everyone else showing up there is like, oh yeah, we're an Irish business now. It's incentive based. So we will see a lot of that, and then we'll see it down to a region. And then we see some folks like, one of the guilds there that's creating Tree. And you can tell by all the things that he's doing there that he has some very utopian views, and that's okay, and that's perfect for him to have. He's got Tree as a guild. He's creating Seed as his in-guild governance token, and he probably, if he follows that theme, he probably wants a nice, peaceful commune somewhere, and he should be entitled to do that. He's got a lot of polis, so he can kind of create some governance around a planetary system where he can make that theme. And I hope it does exist, because it would suck if Star Atlas was all the same all over. Mm-hmm. So I hope that it ends up being that you have different groups of people with different belief systems and different ways that they want to see things mature within Star Atlas have their pocket and their place where they can make that happen.
Yeah. In relation, go ahead, Bonafide.
You just triggered me there, Jesse, because I think Banjo will agree with me here as a min-maxer in many previous games. You tend to have this meta that develops where everybody's doing the exact same thing because that's how you become the most successful, and that's the beauty of not only the sandbox aesthetic but also the metaverse idea as well, is that you're going to be able to have people pursue their operations in totally different ways, and this is an opportunity for people to innovate. And so I just want to encourage everybody not to pigeonhole themselves or be too self-directed too early, like you were mentioning earlier, as far as everybody already kind of following each other into getting into a DAO too early, building alliances too early. These are the old ways of operation, and you have a way to operate in a new way here. Nobody's ever done this before. Nobody's ever been engaged. Nobody knows the right way. Do it your own way. Figure it out. There's a lot of options out there.
It really is a laboratory. So all these people who've grown up or had these ideologies or beliefs that they've wanted to implement, they now have the opportunity to implement it with a few boundaries within a metaverse to really see how it plays out. I personally would love to see somebody who takes a libertarian economic mindset guild, maybe a capitalistic mindset guild, maybe a socialistic mindset guild, and really see how they play out in the metaverse. And I think the thing that's going to intertwine through all of them is human nature is going to show up in the metaverse just like it does externally. The interesting thing about Star Atlas is one of their mottos that they say all the time is power to the people. And when we think about governing structures within the metaverse, power to the people means, to me, most of the power should sit at the local level. Right, that's the power of the people, and then it should filter up, kind of like the Switzerland, method, right, where it's government is more local than national, and I'm wondering if the DAO is going to be set up with that in mind, or if it's going to be kind of a top-down governance system. What do you guys think?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of different perspectives depending on how you come in. A lot of the people from the Spanish squads, like the first thing they think about Star Atlas is what role am I going to play? Because a lot of them are coming from Axie, so they think directly about the gameplay, and the crypto people, they look at the tokenomics and decide if they like it. Yeah, there is a lot of different perspectives to look at Star Atlas from. Especially from the governmental style. I do hope smaller people have power and enough power to potentially like kill space stations or destroying like the status quo is possible, like on a small scale and a big scale. I'd really like that.
Well, we live in a society right now where a lot of people are feeling like there's some level of authoritarianism going on in their country, right? We all experience it in privately. We discuss some of these things. We all experience it in our own ways. How is that going to show up differently in the metaverse when you have people who can probably be a little bit more free, right? So are they going to maybe take what they're feeling in the exterior world and have it show up as some sort of positive output in the interior metaverse? Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, another consideration too, let's say that you have, just to have a random number, let's say that you had 10,000 polis. You've got, at the lowest level you could possibly have is going to be the regional, which means that's still a big area because it doesn't even go down to planetary. So if you're a landowner and you've got some land on a planet, and we believe there's something like up to 64 parcels, and we don't know, let's say that just for, again, round number, there's 10 planets in a planetary system. We don't know how many planetary systems are in a region. So that could be, let's say there's 10 of those. So that's 100 planets before you get to the lowest level of a regional DAO that you can stake your polis. And so it's that DAO that dictates things down at the planetary level, what this planet can and can't do, what's taxed, what isn't, what types of things we focus on. So if you're someone that's got that polis, do you put it there? because you want to have more regional choices and influence? Do you put some there? Do you put it now at the faction level DAO so that you can make some faction-wide decisions and push your influence there? And do you split it in thirds? Do you put it all the way up to the master DAO so that way you're actually a part of the votes and decision-making process for the game as a whole? So you got governance, but you also have all these different tiers, and you can even decide there, like how do you want to play a role in politics? Because that's really what it gets down to at that point.
Do you think the polis will work that way? Do you think you'll be applying it to different levels of the DAO, or do you think it filters up? Do you think it's, you got your regionals that will filter into the faction, which will filter into the game DAO?
As far as I can tell now, they are separate DAOs.
Wow. That's interesting. That actually changes the game on politics, right? Because then it becomes, in order to play in the politics, you've got to be at the faction level, which means guilds are going to have to make a decision. Do they want to do a local play, or do they want to do a faction play? And I think some of the larger guilds are really going to struggle with that decision, right? Because your income's going to come from the local plays if you have a great place in the metaverse and you got great resources. And at the faction, it might be a little bit less concentrated, and you might be at the whim of more voices, if you will.
Yeah, for all those lobbying groups out there, you're gonna have a field day, if for lack of better terms. But if you're gonna divide the polis that you have, or the guild has in general, there's gonna be a lot of voting going on within a DAO, and it's gonna be pretty crazy when it comes to just like a person or a guild. If not everyone in the guild is on the same page, beforehand, there's going to be a lot of hiccups that come down the road.
Here's an example of that. AEP, their guild that's split between all the factions. We all have our different thoughts and ideas about. There's so many unknowns. Who knows? They could be making a great decision based on some information that we later find out that supports that idea. But let's say that it doesn't, and they just spread themselves thin between three different factions. And because of that, they don't have a substantial amount of governance in faction one that they're in, but the other guilds do. And so what do those other guilds do? They're like, we want to minimize the impact of AEP in this faction. So what do? We use our polis at the faction level, and we just insanely tax ship making to where it's 15%, because we know we can make money off of that industry that's there, but they don't have the governance to be able to protect themselves from that. That's a political play that we will see play out in different ways. I'm just using that as an example, but you could apply that to so many different things, mining of particular resources and so on.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Jesse. And just to kind of theory craft that out even a bit more, Ray said lobbying. And if you think about it, there's going to be some guilds have power, but not a lot of polis, or vice versa. So are we going to see some lobbying where maybe some, in-game powerful guilds with not a lot of political clout, rather polis, are lobbying to some of the larger guilds who carry that polis? And what's that dynamic going to look like? Is there going to be a shipbuilders union, so to speak, that's going to lobby on behalf of all the shipbuilders to lower the taxes? Yeah. And it seems like we already know there's going to be political game in the faction DAOs, but it sounds like there might be some political game in the kind of the lobbyist space as well, right?
Well, an example of that could be a lobbyist on behalf of the shipbuilders union could be going to the largest holders of polis and say, look, guy, side room deal. We're going to give you a substantial discount on your ships. We just need your vote.
Yeah.
So you'll see things like that play out, which is what lobbyists do.
Exactly. And I think the cool thing about that, what you just described, Jesse, is this is the depth where we think and want to play. Like this is the some people just want to build ships and mine resources. My head is in, this is the game, right? This is the actual game between the
3D
guilds.
chess.
Yeah. 4D at this point.
That being said, any of you out there that have experience being lobbyists or union stewards or business agents or whatever, come and reach out to the consoles. We'd like to talk to you for sure.
That's the kind of conversations we're having.
That's the kind of conversations we're having in here. So yeah.
Awesome. So another thing that came up, and I think it's safe to say this, that showed up in the Foundation Room chat, is that they're looking at the crew member interactions using the Big Five personality traits. And that was something that was shared by Buntius. And I'm a big fan of the big 5 personality traits. It's something that you can self-assess and kind of understand how people interact and work with one another. So if they're going to that degree on crew member relationships, there's a lot of complexity going to be going on with these crews. These aren't just going to be, this guy is strong and this guy has charisma. There's going to be people within the scale of the big 5, and that can go from agreeableness to disagreeableness. And how is that going to work with other people within the crew? And I don't know if we've shared this publicly, but the council collectively took some self-assessments of tests to kind of see how we would work and interact with one another. Because we're, a couple of us come from corporate backgrounds, and we see the value of how these things show up in the corporate space. And the results were pretty interesting. It was a pretty basic test, but we all came up into a space where we all almost thought the exact same way on some things. And we're able to remain objective on things we agreed with and things we didn't agree with. Any thoughts on the idea of the crew interaction or personality tests as a guild?
Yeah, when it comes to these players having a lot of assets in the game, if they're just going to be playing with NPCs, which a lot aren't, from what I see, there's a lot of scholarships funneling over from Axie Infinity or South American, African, Filipinos. There's going to be people who want to play on the ships or the assets that you've purchased as your guild leader or the individual. So in that case, it would be much easier, I think, as for NPCs for them to work cohesively and synergistically in a way that maybe humans wouldn't be able to if you don't have that structure and management with the processes and procedures that are solidified within the guild amongst the people or the squads or however you're going to have those groups. Because then if you as human beings in a guild aren't working collectively, then it's going to almost be as detrimental as your NPCs not paying attention to your NPCs and what's the weakest traits versus the positive or the attributes, and however we're going to see it. So I think it's going to be a juggling act at first until you have a system or we learn how by playing this is all going to happen. So I really think a lot of people are coming in having this solidified plan when there's going to be a lot of wrenches just thrown that aren't being mentioned to us that we're going to have to focus more time and attention on than just simply doing this macro umbrella. We got our DAO, we got our big ships, we got all the players in the world, and we're going to win. We're going to earn 8x deep space. Mm-hmm. But you're probably not even going to be able to get out there because all your people, it's like herding cats in a guild, and no one knows what to do, and everybody wants to do what they want to do, and so it's going to look pretty interesting.
What if you, as you bring people on into a guild, and this is just a kind of a thought process, and you went out and looked for the big 5 traits of the best fighter teams out there, right? In the real world, what is their big 5 traits and what makes them successful at what they do? And you self-selected some of your fleets for those same traits. Would it show up in the metaverse the same way, where you have these really aggressive, very successful fighter teams based on the personalities of the groups that you have, or maybe you self-assess on a applicant and you see some traits that will not work within a guild, and maybe you're weeding people out that way. There's just so much more you can do with going into the psychology of people within a guild.
Yeah. Sorry, Jess. Just this last point. When it comes to our own tests that we took, and we all kind of aligned similarly, don't be fooled, because just because you might hear that, you might think, oh, there's the weak point right there. Everyone agrees on the same thing, and I see it as you're able to accomplish something much faster than others who don't disagree. But by all means, we have many disagreements and topics that are to come as the game develops that we're not going to see eye to eye on, and the dynamic between us all is healthy enough. The culture of Rome itself, the fish rots from the head down, as they say. So if things weren't happening the way we wanted them, then it would definitely show. And by all means, for members of Rome, we love to hear your support, and the citizens of Rome, your comments, concerns, any advice or suggestions. We're all open, and we read it. We read them all.
I think go ahead, Bonafide.
I kind of looked at it as, we all we're kind of built similarly, so it gave us an understanding of each other. But our perspectives and our backgrounds are so different that we, disagree all the time. I mean, I've been witness to several of our disagreements. So I think I think that it was healthy to know that we all are kind of coming from the same place in a way, even though sometimes we see things differently. I just wanted to bring up this comment by Harmony Payne here. He was talking about, what do you think about the ROI of 12 months? Will it be lucrative enough for scholars? If you look at, say, like a Axie Infinity type of situation, right, where the ROI is a couple of months.
8 months, actually.
8 months.
Around that, yep.
So that being the case, your managers don't typically wait until they ROI to pay their scholars. The way it normally works is they're giving their scholars a piece all throughout. So, like, for instance, me personally, my scholars are all basically going to come and play for Rome. You know what I mean? They're going to use my assets or whoever's assets, as the case may be, and they're all going to come play for Rome, and that's going to be another stream of income for them on top of their Axie pay. And that'll probably be the case for a lot of people. We were talking about the guy Tree. He's leveraging 200 scholars or something like that he's going to bring over. So I think that's going to be a common theme you see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it turns out for sure. Sorry, Ray, go ahead.
No, not at all. It's okay. And yeah, we see Axie Infinity even with Battles V2 when they come out. You might maybe need to play an extra hour to maybe get the full benefit of earning the max capacity, depending on how many Axies you own. But within a 24-hour span of time, you might your day at work in the real world might be 8 hours, right, or a little bit over that, a little bit under that. But you're not going to be spreading yourself thin too much. So by just completing the daily quests of Axie Infinity and then jumping on Star Atlas and doing way more work or time spent in Star Atlas than Axie Infinity, because the earning potential might be there the longer you're playing, right? With Axie Infinity, there's a cap based off of the energy you have, which is based off of how many Axies you own. With Star Atlas, you could potentially, is there a cap on the daily quests? Maybe the ship mission givers, you kind of do a certain amount a day. So we'll have to see how it all works out. But if people think that their scholars are going to be overwhelmed or consumed with just one game and only one game, that's not the right train of thought, in my opinion, because there's going to be time in a whole day to play maybe more than just one play to earn game.
Yeah, we should clarify how scholars work, because there's a question in the chat there. So scholars don't invest; scholars just play, right? And the way it works is somebody like, for example, Ray, who has, or Jess, actually, 3 of you, Bonafide, Jesse, and Ray, all have scholars that you work with in Axie. It's them coming to you to play your assets. So they don't have to invest anything. Their output depends. Their earnings are based on their output. How good they do, and different people have different structures of how they pay out to their scholars. But the idea is to allow somebody who doesn't have the ability to buy assets to come in and earn a living using assets. And I think initially Star Atlas wasn't too hot on this idea. They weren't really focusing on it. But every town hall, somebody asked, what is it going to be? What's it going to be? And now they're actively saying that they're trying to make this mechanism possible.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how they do that. Before we get too far past it, I want to go back to the personality part.
Yeah.
So within Rome, some of the things we do at the very beginning is when you first come to Rome, you're a nomad, and if you want to become a citizen, which means that you're actually in the guild at that point, otherwise you're just kind of passing by and you're hanging out as nomads do. So we have you taken a quick survey where we ask you, I don't know, a series about it, maybe 8 questions, something like that. And we're just trying to get a feel for what have you played in the past? Why do we ask that? Because it gives us an idea of the kind of games you're into, which also lends to the idea of what you like doing. If you're big into first-person shooters, then you know what? When that element of the game comes about, we know that you're kind of like a frontline squad person that wants to get out there and do some stuff. And they have hinted. Michael Wagner mentioned on Kegigan's show. Was it? I always get it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
On his show, that they have some plans to do some monster hunting. So there could be at some point a first-person shooter element. we obviously want to have people in our guild that are taking part in that has some first-person shooter experience. If you're someone that has been a fighter jock in some, aerial combat games, that's going to lend to the day, not now, doesn't really help in the very early stages of the mini game. But once we're in the 3D realm where you have a tactile means to be able to fly your ship, that's going to be, obviously you want people that have that either kind of an interest, that's their temperament, that's their focus, that's what they want to do. You kind of want to allow people to do what they're good at. You look for the skills that people have that allow them to excel, and you kind of want to nurture that. We've got other people that are more interested in, put me in a lab. I want to be the research and development guy that's coming up with new technology. Mm-hmm. Great. Let's fuel that. Why have that person out in combat when that's not what they excel at, nor what they're interested in? So I think that that's a big part of building a successful guild, is finding the avenues for people to excel at what they enjoy doing, what brings them joy, and also what they might already have an aptitude for. So I think it's a combination of those things. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even allowing people what they do in their personal life, their professional life, we've even found roles for them within the guild based on their careers. So, Jesse shared he's 20 years or 20 plus years marketing. That helps out a lot. We've got people who are do logistics in their professional life, and they've been able to help out. So it's not just your gaming experience that gets brought to the table at Rome. It's also your professional experience. But you're not required to be a professional to be in Rome, if that makes sense, right? We're going to, some people want to give more, some people want to give less, some people have more experience, some people have less. There's a home for everybody. And if you want to contribute more, we're absolutely going to take you up on the offer, because building a guild the size of Rome and going into something as aspirational as Star Atlas, it takes a complete village. And like Bonafide said in the chat, it takes a family. And that's really kind of the relationship and dynamics that are building in Rome. All right, so we have
slide them in, baby. Slide them in.
Yeah. So before we get into some of the slides, we're eating up time for sure. Do we want to show those quick? Do we want to show those pictures that we got over the past week and kind of talk about those really quick?
Yeah. So this is I'm not sure if we've seen this before, but they posted it in the Discord. Does look really cool.
And that's 2 sets of eyes, right?
That's the way I see it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Looks like a very powerful alien. Does anyone know the name of this species at all? I don't know off the top of my head.
Neither do I.
Doesn't have a tail, unless that's not included. Like a tail head thing, like the other ones have.
Tail head thing. Is this the same species as a tail head thing, or is this?
No, it looks completely different.
Species, huh?
Yeah.
I do wonder though on the last guy. I guess you'd consider this the male version of an alien, and
Feels that way.
Right,
yeah,
and then
what I think about it, female.
Right, but I'm thinking
you're just going with the gnome. This could be the female.
Yeah,
Right.
Could be.
But the jaw is, so the mouth and how wide it opens up. Like because aliens, they look nice and peaceful or symmetrical, and then it opens its mouth and its jaw just doubles and it dislocates, and you have these teeth come out. So I'm thinking like this is a mouth open as wide as those lines coming out from the side of its lips all the way, and then you can consume someone completely. So I always thought about something like that.
You're assuming it's a mouth. How do you know that's not a birthing canal? Right?
It could be multi-purpose.
What's that next picture you had there, Fancy?
So they also uploaded this one, and yeah, it's awesome.
This one, every time I see it, it's like there's just something about it. And again, it's this thing that we do with pattern recognition. We go based on, we know what our laws of physics here on Earth. We understand what our gravity is. When I look at that head and how narrow the neck is more narrow than this thing that looks like it weighs like 40 pounds that's on top of his head. Fancy Hat and I were talking about this in chat the other day. It's like, can he reach out and grab things with this? Like, can he use it as this? Can you fly a ship? Can you be pressing additional controls with these 4 extra digits? It's an odd configuration for any biological being.
Yeah, it looks like the arms, the torso, the neck, very lengthy, and you can't even really tell where the hips begin. Maybe like on the backside one, you could see maybe like it's behind with its shadows, but the legs seem to be pretty long. It's like where does I don't know.
Well, we
I
don't
wonder
know
how
if the
tall-
legs are long. They might be only legs from the knees
True.
down.
Yeah, those are MC Hammer pants.
Right. Yep.
It is interesting, though. I'll be honest with you. Aesthetically, this one doesn't do it for me. However, it is a unique take on aliens. I don't think, short of like Twi'leks from Star Wars, I don't think we've seen kind of the tentacle head type aliens show up in any big IP. And if it's prehensile, that's a plus. But if it's just hanging there as a decoration,
Yeah.
How do you sit in a spaceship with that thing?
Yeah. That, and does it give you additional function, like you don't need food and water as often? Maybe you could store it like a camel stores water or something, or fat in its hump,
You never know.
It does look like you'd be able to use a primordial glow jacket on this.
Yeah.
Good point.
We wasn't sure if it'd be able to use on the Ooster because they're just so big. Well, perhaps they are, but yeah, because we do know the spacesuit is for humans only, I believe.
Yeah. And I just heard, maybe you guys knew this and I didn't, but I just got a response in one of the chats that the Armstrong suit gives a health benefit. So, I mean, for certain species, what's the point? Why would an AI put on an Armstrong suit for a health benefit? So I'm curious how much of the stuff that we're seeing is going to be faction or race dependent versus, ambiguous for all the different races and classes.
Right.
Yeah, and they also released this picture as well. They released the terraforming picture last week, and that was really nice. This one seems to be outside, which is quite interesting, and the mountaintops are really steep as well.
It shows kids and pets.
Right.
So is pets something they talked about on the town hall? I haven't been able to listen to it yet. I'm under the impression pets were mentioned somewhere.
I heard something about children going around and running around and eventually growing up and then going through the academy process and all that.
That was a way that was projected out by development saying, hey, this is something we've thought about. And if it did ever come to pass, it is not even in the early stages of the Game Pass alpha. It's like way future out there. But that's just cool to know that they're thinking about that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one thing I have thought about when looking at this picture is what if it's like a crater from a place that got bombed by a grenadier?
Oh, like the Fimble? Like it came through and this is the terraforming?
Yeah, because it's really steep, those mountains. It does look like it's a big dent in the ground.
Yeah.
So does that mean that structure it landed there? Was it placed there? Was it built there?
Yeah, a lot of questions. That could be like a high tier land claim, perhaps, or a low tier because it's not that like horizontally spread out.
So this is the second picture we've seen where it's agricultural based as well as far as resources go, right? So we're now harvesting plants. We've got that one there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Fancy?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it looks like it's indoors, so it does seem like there would be options between the two. Like perhaps you can grow different things at like a warmer climate inside. But yeah, they both do have a lot of farming equipment just going around, and yeah, I like those little bots, the little pickers. I'm sure they'll be useful.
Right. And when it comes to these buildings, it's like the scale of the human to the truck to the machine that's harvesting or planting or whatever you want to call it, and then the actual structure itself. Imagine just what's inside there. Are there offices? Or what's going on? Like you could live in and take a whole week to explore that building if its main purpose is to do multiple things inside. But I can only imagine.
Here's my guess on that one, because on the town hall, Michael Wagner did talk about, and he didn't say it like in answering a question. I think it was almost in casual passing, talking about how on a land claim, you might be mining or you might be farming. So I think that those are going to be two of the primary activities that we might see take place on a land claim initially. And in this instance, maybe that is a structure that houses your civilization in that particular claim. Like you might say, here's my land claim. I need a place to put people that work all of this, because if we look at all those vehicles, that's a lot of vehicles that all seem to be dedicated to farming, and they all have that label of Kerry Farm, which is kind of like the Pierce of shipbuilding. It sounds like Kerry Farm is the company within the game NPC side that is making a lot of farming equipment.
Yeah, one thing I wonder looking at this picture is if like a Pierce X4 is $20, how much would a ship like the one being loaded up cost? Land vehicles.
Yeah, because
if we're going to need this many like drones and ships and cargo little trucks everywhere, then that's going to add up quick.
It will, yeah. Or is it maybe something like you could get a farming kit, kind of like right now when you buy a mine, you do need a drill, you do need a power source. But other than that, you seem to get all of the equipment that requires to mine. And that's going to be stuff too, like trucks that moves things from point A to point B. So maybe if you buy just like instead of a mine, you buy a farming outfit. And so that comes with everything you need to do to farm. I don't think they're going to go so granular to start with, for sure.
I don't think I think it would create too much complexity. What's interesting is most of the pictures that we're seeing that are terrestrial based are humans. We're not seeing a lot of aliens in pictures. We've seen some with some Ooster, but I'm wondering if aliens and Ooster, if you were to look at food or agriculture, if they have a different type of agriculture. So, and the reason I'm asking that question is if you are a mud person in an Oni faction, are you going to have to get your food imported in because they only make a certain type of food in that faction, or will it be more like the ships? They're kind of agnostic to all the factions. It seems like they could take it as far as they want, but it's a lot of complexity to add into a game that's already very complex.
Well, here's how it works. I'm just making this up. The Ooster just need battery cells. The Oni, the humans grow produce for themselves, and the Oni eat the humans.
Hey, there you go.
I knew you were going there.
There you go.
Cycle of life.
Yeah, that's a stomach on that alien's head. That's what that is. It's big enough for a human.
The intestines on the outside of the body.
Yeah.
Fancy, is there any other pictures? Or are we ready to go into our some of the slides we have done?
Yeah, so I did see a couple more pictures on the Calico Hero ArtStation page.
Nice.
It occasionally just gets updated, and this is the interior of the cargo bay. It's quite cool. Yeah, you can see the elevator. You don't need like much room apparently to go upstairs.
Yeah.
That's
that is cool. That goes to show you got it. It feels like maybe again because the Heroes in that same category of ship is like the Millennium Falcon. So again, you could pack some stuff in here. We do know that it fits like an X4, but it almost looks like you could fit a couple of X4s side by side in here. We also know that each of the ship has components and you have modules. We don't really know completely the difference between what those are. We have some ideas of what those represent, but you can actually add on things like fuel bay or storage bay as a module. So who knows, maybe even on this one, you could add on additional storage.
What came to mind is GTA and you wanting to pack as many X4s right up in there. And then you just see them all glitching out, and then one might disappear. I don't know if you ever played, but if you wanted to max capacity up to the ceiling, not just side by side, maybe you could just ram one in there and it would take some damage and it wouldn't be that great of a situation. But is that even possible, or is there a fixed amount for every ship that's going to be able to be put in there? I'm curious on that.
Yeah, on the design wise. Sorry guys, on the design wise, I brought this picture up because one thing I don't like about the Calico Hero is having to load in through the side like this. Like on the Pierce F4, you can just go straight in.
Yeah,
that would be like more ideal for like loading smaller vehicles, in my opinion.
On that last screenshot you had, it also shows a strange use of space. Not this one, but the one prior. No, it was the other one. It was another one, another side view, the side loading view.
The side of the Hero, side view of the Hero.
We're sure the loading bay.
Sorry.
But anyway, in that one, as you pull it up here, yeah, you can see in that front area, right before there's a staircase, and I know you have another image of this, but that whole, it seems like a strange use of space. That whole front section right behind those seats is just staircase.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a strange, I would much rather have like a ladder that climbs up there rather than have that whole space right there just utilized for walking up to the flight deck.
I think the other thing that we're seeing in these ship designs is they're all scaled to human size. And we've seen some Ooster that are pretty big compared
Right.
to some humans. So can you imagine the big Oosters we've seen using that little elevator to go up to the second story there? So I'm curious if we're going to start seeing some ships that show up that are scaled for a larger alien species than a human.
Right. Like the Opod, which would have to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so this is the view from the cockpit, and you can see the staircase and what Whitakus was talking about, how there is quite a lot of room wasted.
Yeah.
But
I
it
would
does look
much
great,
rather.
though.
Yeah, I'd rather have like a little ladder that you climb the flight deck. That way that could be used for additional storage space there rather than just being a staircase. That was a strange design choice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's more for
I was-
cosmetics.
Yeah.
Right. The photo on the left is helicopter view, so you're looking down at both chairs that you would, and then walk down the stairs behind. And
Yeah.
from this angle, it doesn't look like it takes up that much space. Like I guess you could have always made a ladder and maybe fit one more 4X, X4 in the back. But we'll see.
Well, on the topic of picking it apart, it seems to me like a ship that is as big as the Calico would also have more than a crew of two. Or all we're seeing is a front end or front facing crew of two, and we've seen smaller ships with more seats up front. And I get there might be some crew in other pieces of the ship, but it seems like they could do more here as well with the space.
Interesting. Yeah. Like, what do you imagine? Like, maybe these are also things that if you add on a module, like something that's like a gunner bay or something like that, then that becomes a space for another crew member.
Right.
Good point. This might be the base configuration of a the bridge, if you will, and that maybe a different component would change what it looks like on the inside.
Yeah.
That's my understanding, that those crew numbers are just minimums, right? So you could have a lot more people actually working on the ship.
But I sense that the Calico line is already coming pretty stacked. So as where a lot of other ships may be base models, the fact that they call these multi-roles kind of lends towards the idea that it's going to come with most of the things you need, even though it's got a few slots. For example, if you look at the slot components on the Guardian, there's not that many. And the reason I don't think that there's that many for the size of the ship is because it already comes with so many things.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But we'll see. That's going to be a big reveal at some point when we understand what the loadouts are stock on the ships.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Jesse took the time to put together some slides and kind of talk about the game and bring us along where we're at. Jesse, do you want to kind of, you've got the slides up on your side there, I think.
Yeah, sure. And I created a bunch, and we won't have time to go through all of these. But if we don't, I think they're good talking points in the future. The point of this is for those of you who have been with us the whole ride, meaning you're kind of like one of the OGs now in Star Atlas, going back to the posters. So there's been a few things that have happened since then. And the first phase beyond the posters was called the GAO, the Galactic Asset Offering. And that's the stage we're still in right now. That's the stage where the initial ship offering has taken place. Not all of the ships. I think we've maybe seen about half of the ships, maybe less. We'll be able to see some of those in a moment. And then the next phase we're about to move into, and we've been in this holding pattern for this stage coming up for quite some time. And so we're all a little bit anxious, and that's the browser minigame. The idea of the browser minigame from the high level perspective of the company is to make it so that those of us who have participated in helping to raise the funds for the company through this Galactic Asset Offering now have the ability for the first time to begin seeing some returns. And so that's going to be in a mini game within the browser long before the 3D game has been fully developed or released or playable. And I did see a comment earlier, someone asking about VR. And yes, absolutely. There's going to come a point in time where VR will absolutely be a part of the game experience as it rolls out and it's developed. But for now, it's going to be a browser minigame, probably best represented in what we find in O-Game now. where you're sent out on missions. You click a button, it goes out, your ship does what it needs to do, it comes back at some point with timers, and you're rewarded in Atlas. The other aspect of that mini game is going to be that we will be able to stake some polis in the master DAO, which is the governing body that sits outside of the game. There won't be any in-game governance at that initial phase. So that's what's next. And so people keep asking, when game, when game? We've been told that they're shooting again for a couple weeks. And then honestly, it's been a couple weeks for about 2 months, but that's the nature of software development. We're sure that they're putting on the finishing touches, polishing the chrome, doing all the things to make it so that it's a good playable experience that isn't interrupted by things that they overlooked. So I appreciate them taking the time to get it right before they introduce that. Once the browser game has been released, then we'll start to go in a phase where they're going to show the shipyard. The shipyard's going to be an opportunity for us to take a look at the different modules and components that we want to stack to deck our ship out in. And without going too much into that, we do have the opportunity to talk about these as we go through them, but I just wanted to show the phases. Then we enter the final pre-sale at beta, and then there will be ongoing sales from Star Atlas. So these are the phases that have been outlined within the Star Atlas white paper. And it's fascinating. Reading the white paper again today, I've been through it many times. It's amazing how on point they are sticking to so much of this idea that they fleshed out before they even release the white paper, because while there will be things that change, there's a lot that sticks to it as it has been. So let me go here. So this Galactic asset offering. So guys, I mean, we're at the point now where we've seen essentially two kind of phases of ship sales. And then now they're open traded on the market, and we've seen the markets go up and down. We just saw even Polis, since the tokens have been released, those Polis went up to $10, dropped back down to about $7.50, $7.40 right now. And it goes to show you how much of any market, be it stocks, be it crypto, is news-based and emotion-based. So we just saw a 25% flex in the price there, just based on the fact from the time that they opened up signups. So with the initial phase there of ships, what are you guys thinking about the initial ship release that's been out?
I think we've taken a delay. We've kind of slowed down a little bit. I think the ships that they've released so far are great ships. I think the thing that I wish they had done differently is we have gone into other ships sooner, because right now everyone's rebuilding, and this is selfish, but right now everybody's rebuilding their bags. And some of the ships that I want, because I was hoping people had spent all their cash on the ships that they wanted, the ships that I want that haven't sold yet are now going to have more competition. So the selfishly, I wish they would have gone more sooner. However, I think everything we've seen so far is fantastic. We've got great ships individually between us. Within the guild, we've got some great ships. So far, so good.
Yeah, the small ship I'm most interested in at the moment is the Tooth of Feast. There has been a lot of conversation about the Rainbow Chew. But I know nothing about the Tooth of Feast yet. Small fighter.
So those are two brands that we have not even seen yet. I don't even think we know who builds them. Tufa and Rainbow. Rainbow obviously looks very Oni alien-ish, I guess, but I guess it could potentially even be Ooster. By the way, you're seeing there, anything that's in green is a ship that has already been offered for sale, and anything in the orange there is a ship that has not yet been offered. So these are things that will be made available before the end of the year. Now, someone asked us on the town hall whether or not all ships would be made available that are in this GAO and this initial ship release, if they'll be made available prior to the mini game. That was not answered specifically. It just said that the intention is to have these released before the end of the year.
Yeah, one thing I want to see is how they're going to specialize each style of ship. So, for example, there's 4, 5, 6 fighters on this small list already. Like, how are they going to distinguish between things of the same size and rarity? So, like the Rainbow and the Tufa, or the Pierce X6 and the Bios.
Yeah,
they're going to be in direct competition with each other and what's been released already.
Yeah, I don't see how they. Sorry, Jesse. I don't see how they release all these ships before the mini game. And honestly, I think if they waited to release all these ships before they did the mini game, there'd be a lot of unhappy people within the community.
Well, I don't think that they need to, because here's an interesting thing. Like, there's some ships, for example, like the racers. So, which there's two. There's the Opal Jet and there's the Jet. Those two, I don't even know if there will be any minigame practical application for those. Maybe they'll figure out a way to put them in, but that's a strange one, because racing, you normally think of racing as being a kind of a tactile sport where it's going to depend on someone's skills somehow. And being that this is more of a timer-based push button launch things, I don't know where racers come into play. So that's one that's going to be interesting. But then when we look at the other fighters, okay, the Pierce X4, yes, there could be some application for that. The Pierce X5, which is a two-seater. So that's the first one, I guess, being that one, if it's, I don't know, is that one eligible? Yeah, I guess it would be for the pilot's license if anyone has a Pierce X5. That one's actually a cool ship, being that it has a number of different flight configurations. You can have all thrusters back to go in like super fast mode, all thrusters forward, but in gun mode, so you're in combat. And then you can have kind of like the one that's in between, where you have two thrusters behind you and two guns in front. So it's configurable and seems pretty flexible to do a lot of things. So in this mini game, I can see room for fighters, and I can see room for cargo. But beyond that, it's going to be really interesting to see what minigame even offers. So I agree, you don't need all of these to go into the minigame.
Well, you know, they said there was going to be 11 quest givers per faction. So I imagine each one of those is going to have to do with the type of ship or potentially just the mission type. My guess is, from a gaming loop perspective, from a racer, you'll probably stake your jet to a mission, if you will. That's a race. And random number generators will probably generate a winner initially. That's the only way I can see them doing racers. Sorry, Fancy, didn't mean to step on you there.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the bounty hunters. So one way I could see them doing that is you would just send like a bounty hunter out to space, or they just wait there pretty much, waiting for like the thing to come to them or to be found. But when you do eventually get a catch, you would get like a big bag all at once. I could see that be how it works.
Yeah, I think that's the ship I'm most excited about now. It's the last one I really feel like I must have in my wallet.
Yeah.
Based on what we've seen, at least in the ship brochure so far. I'm sure there's others that they haven't talked about. I just hope that, you know, the urgency that some of us have to get some of these ships isn't offset by some other ships we don't even know anything about yet. And how is that going to impact the market? Are people going to drop their Guardians, you know, for another ship that just looks cooler or might have some better perceived utility?
So the only thing we have to go on for the Visus here, the Envoy, is the OPOD. And the OPOD is probably one of the, I think it's the most popular ship that's probably been released utility-wise, other than the Hero. But the Hero is obviously considerably, quite a bit more. So for price-wise, I think it's probably the best ship for the buck, really, at this point. So I'm curious to see what that bounty hunter is going to look like, because the design of the OPOD is pretty cool.
Well, in both cases, sorry, Jesse, real quick. Yeah. In both cases, those ships, in support of what you're saying, they're geared towards solo play, right? You got Data Runner is kind of solo play, and Bounty Hunter is probably solo play as well. So I understand why they might be more favorable to the community.
Yeah. And then what's interesting here is that you've got the Pierce X6, and they just kind of flew right past that one, because we've seen the X4, we've seen the X5, we've seen the F4 now. We know what there's a C9, there's a C11. Is there a C9? Did I see that? Make that? Yeah, C9, C11. But they passed right by the X6, which is going to be a small fighter. So it's going to be curious to see what that looks like. Based on the other designs, it's going to have some jagged edges and be somewhat boxy. But it's going to be curious to see where that fits in now compared to, it's going to be somewhere between that X5, which we know what that looks like, and that F4. So it's going to be an interesting ship that they can almost have to squeeze it in, but it doesn't, and it's probably also going to have a price point of probably right around $1,000 is my guess.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about the price of the Bounty Hunter? What do you think it's going to be?
I think 1,000 is fair. Yeah. What was the Visa Soap Pod originally at again?
15,
20.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought it was 1,500.
Okay,
That sounds
yeah.
about right.
Yeah, maybe like 750 or 500 if it's smaller, or by one. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
I think the metaverse is going to see a lot of bounty hunters at the outset. I think there's a lot of people who have this idea of Mandalorian or Star Wars, and I think they're really going to want to get into the kind of the gameplay of that style.
But that raises the question: are all the bounties on NPCs, or are players doing enough stuff? I'm guessing in the mid-tier zone, because or maybe even the safe zone. Maybe you can fire on someone, you can't do too much damage, but you can do something, smuggling perhaps, some violations of airspace, some violations of faction. Maybe you just went into a faction territory without a faction passport. There's going to be some things that you can probably do that put a bounty out on you. I don't know.
Well, it's an interesting title. Go ahead, Bonaparte.
I would like to see us putting bounties out on people, like the players being able to assign bounties to other players. Is the kind of gameplay that I'm most interested in. But go ahead.
We've already got a couple people I think we could set a good bounty on. I think, at this point.
Bounty hunting competition.
But what's interesting is the title. The other names of the ships and their utility makes sense, but it's rare that there's a ship that you would buy specifically for bounty hunting. Another IP, what we normally see is a ship that a bounty hunter uses, but you wouldn't say that, that's a bounty hunter ship, right?
Right.
So what's gonna distinguish a bounty hunter ship is what I'm curious about.
Yeah. The other ship on here that's kind of a strange one that we don't know enough about what it's going to be, the Fimble, the Bios Erp. And the reason that's an unusual one is that the Fimble model of ship just seems to be like a tank. Like you could just imagine them all running on diesel. Like we've seen that big old cargo hauler, that the freight hauler one, and then we've seen the bomber. So those are the only two Fimbles that we've seen, and in both cases, these things don't look fast, they don't look nimble, they seem sluggish, but they seem reliable. Like every time you turn that thing on, it's going to turn over and start.
Yeah, tin can with the jet engine is really what they look like, right?
Yeah. The Tufa's an unknown. The Rainbow, we kind of have some pictures of, but I don't think we've seen any pictures of the Tufa, unless maybe that last ship that we saw within Foundation, the one that kind of looked like a jet ski. maybe that's the Fimble.
Could be. We did see some alpha of the OPOD jet as well, and kind of how it moves, which is really interesting to see. I'm glad they're starting to share some leaks in that Foundation room of kind of the mechanics of how things work. They're not just showing pictures; they're showing the movement within the asset itself.
Right. Any other thoughts on small ships here?
I'm good.
All right. Well, that brings us to the next model. By the way, we'll probably only get through ships here, but it's kind of interesting looking to see where we're at now versus where we're going and where we've already come from. But if we look at the medium ships, there's been more medium ships sold than any other category here. There's only 3 ships on this list that we have not seen yet. Again, we've talked about the OPOD earlier, which is the ship that kind of gives us an idea of what the bounty hunter ship might look like based on it's that ship builder. The Calico Evac, that'll be an interesting one simply because it again is very specific in what it does, and we have seen the other Calico ships, the Hero and the Guardian. We haven't seen any Rainbow ships, so the Ohm, which is going to be a new freight ship. It'd be the second. It's the second freight ship that's been offered. And then the Pierce X8, which is a really interesting ship, which we've talked about here in the show. It's larger than I think most of us thought it was going to be. And it seems to have a lot of different configurations for fueling, repair, and a little command center on top that can spin around in multiple directions. But all those other ships there, the F4, the Packlight, the Hero, the Grenadier in the last sale, and the Threpa, the Ogrica, those have all been on sale so far. You guys have any favorites here, or are you looking forward to any of the stuff that's not been put out yet?
I'm interested in what the Calico Evac is going to be. It's an uncommon, so I think it might be cheaper if we're going from top to bottom. And but its use case, what other ships are rescue as far as the asset info. So I think these will be commonplace as far as medium ships, but I'm just curious to see at what point are these going to be needed in mass, if at all. Like if you got into a battle, you just need these on the sidelines ready to go to just pick up the pods that your crew members are in, and then safely get them back before someone else picks them up. Like, is it automated? If it's a ship, then someone has to man these ships. Are there going to be fleets of just calico evacs? I'm not sure.
And if it's a medium, it's going to be similar size to the O-Pod. So we have an idea what size it's going to be. But my biggest question about the rescue ship is what makes a rescue ship different from any other ship that says, hey, I'm going to go rescue people. Maybe because it is designated as a rescue ship, like the Red Cross has got a big cross on it. Maybe it can enter deep space with some buffs so that maybe it's kind of like off limits for attacking. Maybe it's kind of like that neutral party where it's, hey, look, we're just out here for rescue.
My guess would be is it would have a module component for like a medical room or doctors, whatever, and just a place to transport people. Yeah.
Interesting idea there, Jesse, because we actually do that in the real world. I don't know if you guys know about the hospital ships that the Navy has. They have two, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, these big white ships with Red Cross on them. And they have no armaments, no defense capabilities whatsoever. They're all about rescuing, and they're just basically big, huge floating hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even know if that rescue is NPC based, but there might be a ship component as well, right? Maybe they can rescue X5s and repair them and put them back into battle. It could be more than just the races.
Well, that's what I'm interested about in as far as that Pierce R8, right? Because that's going to be basically the wrecker ship, right? Where you go in and you have these big catastrophes out there, and you go in there and you salvage whatever, right? Repair what you can.
And refueling, as a service. There's going to be some folks out there that get through a half a mission, or and they didn't have enough fuel to get where they were going or to get back, and you're going to have to call on a refueler. Or that's just your role in a guild. That's what you want to do. You want to be out supporting your fleets by making sure that you're doing the repair and refuel on them.
I think the interesting thing is we know that we know what price point the Thripid came out at, and what was it, around 8,900? Is that right, Ray?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
And then we had the Pierce R8 above that as an epic, which is a lower level ship than a legendary, right? So I'm curious where it's going to come in from a price point. Is the Thripid going to be the highest priced ship in that class at this point?
Well, if we compare it to another epic that's also large, that was the Thimble, which wasn't that around 8?
Yep.
Yeah. I've got it up on my screen now. The Ogrika Thripid is 8,170.
So I would say 75, probably 8, somewhere in there.
Yeah. I'd reckon the PSR rate is the highest, without a doubt.
Yeah, same here.
We have seen pictures of it, though, haven't we? We've seen the pictures of that, and we've also seen the pictures of another Pierce that looks like a manta ray. And I'm not sure if it's a capital ship or something larger, but there is a Pierce variant out there that looks very wide-winged.
Interesting. I don't recall seeing that one.
Yeah,
I think it's on our Discord.
But if you have all of the medium and large ships at your disposal, you're set to go. So that's a nice little fleet there. Covers all your bases.
That brings us to only one of the capitals have been made available, which does leave that Pierce C9. It leaves another Thimble, which is going to be even a bigger version of that thing that kind of looks like it might. You could almost mistake that Thimble for some farming equipment. The last one, like a big sky tractor. But then again, though, it's like the Greenpeace bomber. It's going around planting trees, reclaiming land from the destruction of the mining operations and terraforming it back into something natural. It says natural, but what does that mean? If you're on Mars, natural just means you're just sending it back to its dirt red landscape.
Right.
Yeah, and one thing to think about is the Grenadier, and the Bomberella is going to be one step up and considerably more expensive. So what is that going to be able to do?
Imagine maybe you can terraform a whole planet with that thing. That'd be cool.
Jesse, that ship that I was just talking about is actually the Pierce C9. Do you mind if I bring that up really quick?
Yeah, please do. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Okay.
Right. So
I've never seen this picture. Look at that thing.
Yeah,
it's
we only
really
had one
interesting.
angle of the ship. This seems to be the above helicopter-ish type of view.
Wow.
So what are we seeing there? We see, it's got that kind of manta ray look. It's got that unique feature on the top side. To me, that looks like that would hold another ship. We've seen those, what they called submarines or high-end escape pods. I'm not sure what sits in there, or if that's a sensor of some sort. You can see if you zoom in, I don't know if we can do it here, but each wing really looks like a bay for different ships also.
Right.
Yeah, so this is also labeled as the C9.
Oh, interesting.
That's a different configuration then.
Yeah.
Huh.
Looks
And look how
really
big that there's just the R8 next to it. So there's some comparison. And then a bunch of X5s flying around.
Right.
Yeah, it says C9 clearer on this one at the bottom.
Huh.
So maybe it's just a way, or it's a way the ship can, I guess, transform for different purposes, or that's how it's built. Depending
I think
on
it's a
the
different ship.
components.
One must be
Yeah, that
mislabeled.
I think it is a
that's
different
a totally
ship.
different ship to me.
Because the bottom, see, remember those big things? You pull that ship back up you had?
Yeah, I'm finding the other one.
Has to be probably.
The one I brought?
Yeah. Okay, see those big things at the bottom? That's what was kind of throwing me off because I didn't see. Maybe then again, that could be a module, but it definitely looks different. Like there's a lot of different stuff going on in there. But it says it's got that 9 next to Pierce, but it doesn't. And there is a C at the bottom on that one side. That's fascinating. Huh.
We'll have to ask more questions.
I guess. But then you also look at the scale. Look how small the people are in the front.
Right.
That is probably one of the biggest command centers that we've seen on a ship because even on the Guardian, it's not that big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then that module on the back is interesting too. And it
the
looks
size
like, and
Sorry.
this is, okay, so now when we look at the butterfly wing version up top, we're looking at a side view. I was looking at that almost as if it was a front-facing view.
Oh,
Right.
That wing. Interesting.
Do we know the meterage, the size of this in meters compared to, I guess, a Calico?
It's not been released on all of them.
No, but if they have it listed as a capital ship, if it was comparable, then in the 300-meter range.
Yeah, we have Tomo in the comments, Tomo90, mentioning how it looks like an aircraft carrier, but he thinks that the image is one half of the ship. So maybe it's a ship that's sliced in half. But then again, that part that's standing on the back end looks like, for whatever purpose it has, it seems like how would that fit in if it was a slice and a half? But it's a good observation.
Bring up that other C9. Bodie's saying that he thinks it's the top piece of this.
Oh, maybe that's true. Yeah, I
I
can kind of see it up there.
Yeah,
It even has that thing on the top.
That makes more. I think that's what Tomo was actually trying to say as well. Okay, that makes more sense. I wasn't getting it. They were looking like two different ships to me.
Now
But
is it
seems
detachable?
long. It seems long now, though, with that one. As with the other one, it didn't seem like it had that length to it. It seemed like it was wider and squatty with those two side things.
That's what Bodie's saying. He's saying that piece on the back that's kind of sitting up on the back is the other picture. That's what he's thinking.
Yeah, like
Actually,
how
I see that. Actually,
like how the Calico Guardian can fit the Calico Hero inside of it. I wouldn't be too surprised if this capital ship had like a little helicopter.
Like Star Trek,
Right.
where they the housing unit, that big circular disc would split off from the bottom part, and they would do their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wonder if it pulls off and could fly on its own. That would be
Exactly,
interesting as well.
Like maybe you can get the leadership away or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
It's a escape hatch.
Very interesting. Well, then it goes back to, it makes more sense now, right? Everything is starting to align there. I am still really curious about what that thing is up on the top.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to that. It's there for a reason.
Well, I think it's one of the many modules that you can outfit on a variety of ships, and that's going to be the other interesting thing. When we talk about modules and components, is each ship manufacturer going to have components that are specific to that brand of ship, or is a module manufacturer going to be able to make a module that can then be retrofitted on any of the types of ship that have a module or component space? And by the way, those module and components come in different sizes. So what we don't know yet is on the different ships, when it says there's room for 4 modules, is that 4 small modules? Is that 4 medium? What's the split between those? So there's so much for us to learn about what's going to be retrofitted or be able to be placed on each of these different ship types.
And looking at the scale of the humans in that breakout picture, and then looking at this side shot of the entire ship, it really gives you a sense of scale of how big this ship is. This is a ship you don't just walk from the back to the front and not run out of breath. This is a big ship.
Well, it says up top 400. Is that 400 meters?
Yeah,
400.
sure is.
Yeah. Doesn't look like you'd be able to land it like on the ground, really.
Yeah, I think that's just something that sits in orbit.
But we have seen them in some of the kind of terrestrial battle shots, haven't we? We've seen them in atmosphere.
I almost recall seeing this too in one of the shipbuilding ports. That view where you saw one of the large ships where they're building ships on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like there was something almost this big and almost the same shape, because all of the pierces have that. Yeah, kind of like in this one here. We're like, I don't know what that ship is there, but it's definitely a similar size. That looks like it's about 400 meters.
Yeah. Also, the other thing on that blueprint shot was the size of the guns on top. I mean, can you go back to that, Fancy?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the top just to the right of the center there, those look like guns.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about the size of the people in that other picture, those guns are phenomenally big. They're very big guns.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff. And we have some people in Rome who are looking to buy these ships as well. So really excited to see how this shows up in a guild as well. I'm not sure who brought up the Bodhi tree comment, but go ahead and run with it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where it is still. I think it is at the back.
You talking about that other module or the other ship part? Yeah, it's the top left right there. You can kind of see that little. Yeah, exactly. So that part is sitting on the top of the back of the thing.
Right.
I'm pretty sure
almost like
they're
chopped in
right.
half.
Yeah.
Where are those tube containers though? Those tubes, those big things, is that again, is that a module, or is that what is the main base of this thing? Because I don't see those on there. That's kind of the piece that I'm not really seeing where those add up.
Yeah. They'd be hidden though if they were, just the way they come together, right? It'd be like buried inside the.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Why don't we jump back to the large ships, Jesse, and we can.
Yeah.
Cool. So I mean, we've essentially now. Where are we at? Here we go. Oh, did we? Oh, yeah. You got to pull that one off the screen. There we go. So, we've got this Agrica too. We've seen one Agrica, the Threpid, so far. Now we have this Jod Asteris, which is going to be a capital transport, which is interesting because it's really the only one that's labeled specifically as a transport. Mm-hmm. So, is its sole role when we say transport, which is different than freighter? What are we transporting? When you think of transport, that generally means people. We saw one photo where it showed soldiers getting onto, I believe it was the F4.
Mm-hmm.
So are there going to be instances where you're transporting soldiers for ground combat? Are you transporting, why are you transporting people? What's the reason for the ship?
Or if you set up a tier 5 mine, do you have to transport all the crew to come set it up? I mean, I think there's a lot of things they could do with it. And I'm wondering if in that picture that we just saw recently that Fancy brought up with that real long oblong ship, it looks very similar to other transport ships we've seen in other, space games, right? Not a lot of armament, just something big, long. I know that there's one particular person out in the metaverse right now that's working on some sort of, spaceship idea that is for concerts. And I know that Wagner has talked about transporting people from event to event as well. So
it was Kagijan that mentioned that, talking about being a taxi service.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, if you want to spend 25 grand on a taxi, all the more power to you. But I'm sure somebody in the metaverse would love to do that as their job.
Yeah, if you're gonna get paid for something, there's gonna be someone doing it.
Yeah.
So, all right, that capital
As far as the
ships,
job
yeah,
is
and
concerned.
in the 25 to 30 range, we still have 3 of those ships that we're going to see here at some point, including that larger bomber, the C9 and the Jod Astros. So that brings us to the commander ships, which we haven't seen any yet. I know we've got a lot of folks within Rome that have their sights set on that C11. It'd be interesting. Again, there's another Fimble, man. It's like this. I can only imagine this thing is just going to be the most behemoth, massive anomaly, which is listed at in rarity, of this tank that is going around and planting trees.
And I think
the commander bomber.
right, it'll literally plant trees.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Is that in the name? Tree arrow implies that there's going to be some sort of terraforming there, in my opinion. And based on the bomber we've already seen, which was pretty sizable, what is this going to be needed for? Right? I mean, is this how many? I guess property claims can this take out with one bomb?
Well, even that acronym, what's that acronym mean? Ecos, but you see tree arrow, ecos is an ecosystem. It's definitely geared towards doing some things like that.
Yeah, that whole manufacturer is all about being a hippie, right? So
Indeed.
Yeah, and I think you need these types of ships with these effects after the fact, because if, as we know, these space games are all about destroying things and depleting resources, then what is there and who will be those individuals or businesses that replenish what's been taken or destroyed? That's a very important piece to keep the whole ecosystem healthy.
Wasn't that a Star Trek concept or a movie where it was about terraforming a planet with the bomb? Wasn't there a Star Trek movie that did that, and that's how Spock came back to life?
Interesting.
I'm sure you're probably right.
We do know, by the way, that ECOS stands for Earth Conscious Ontological Society.
Okay, well, there you go. Huh. And so what's fascinating there is I love is you already mentioned this, Ray. I love the idea of being able to go to a planet, and let's say that there was just a war that just ravaged the whole place and it was just leveled. Now you could actually go there and terraform the entire planet.
Right.
And now that planet could become something completely different than it had been in the metaverse for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, if you think about it, each faction has its own resources that another faction will need. So if you're going to have your whole, anomaly, Fimble, tree arrow group coming in after, or with the force of just and the intent of destroying that planet and its resources, then you're gonna want to secure those resources. So if it's been depleted, or if there's only a finite amount on a planet, then I don't know how that's going to work either. Are there going to be only limited amount of resources on a planet? I think so. And then to replenish them, that's what's going to keep the fighting a main component of the game, as far as like blowing each other up, reclaiming or retaking control of a faction's planet that has resources that you need, and then you'll be able to secure it. So there's going to be a lot of tug of war and fighting going on.
Yeah.
So we know that mud is, it's human based. They're from Earth. I think the lore said they were warring factions. What's interesting is we've got a ship series that's based on environmental issues. So is that something else besides like the normal mud faction that maybe is kind of attacking war from a different angle, or is this a warring human faction that's kind of followed the green environmental movement, right? So they're going to kill you, but then they're going to make your planet look pretty afterwards, right? I wonder if this is a mud thing or a human thing.
We're going to annihilate you, but we're going to plant some trees.
Yeah, it's almost like this was. It's almost. I wonder if this is an Ani. I wouldn't, or an Uster type of ship, because we know the Pierce is human, but it would be interesting to know if the aliens have gotten over that the point, I guess, from living so many years, hundreds of years, that fighting isn't the way, and then they built these ships, or it's an AI ship that was created because they know what organic matter or humans and aliens are like destructive.
I'm thinking Ooster. And the reason I'm thinking Ooster is the things that we've learned about lore from them thus far is that they are a very spiritual based race. They are striving to understand themselves and the place in the universe. You see how they're like trying to feel more alive. They're even into fashion. I could definitely see Ooster being the ones that created this ship.
Well, I think it's mud because it's called again the Earth Conscious Ontological Society. So there's also the word conscious in there. So I guess that goes towards Easter, maybe.
Yeah.
I love this comment by Tom.
Nobody's thinking Ooster.
Yeah.
We'll see.
The C-11 is a big beast. And again, both of these, even though the Triero is a bomber, I think both of these are something that a guild could call home base. I think that, even if they didn't have a space station somewhere, you could literally house a large group of people on this.
Well, that's what they're saying here is that it's the size of a small space station. So, and if you think about like the last class of ships, you're talking that 300-meter range. That's the size of a naval aircraft carrier, which are basically cities. So yeah, you got a lot of space here.
Well, it raises an interesting question, though. So if you could literally house your entire group of people on this here, then you would think that this would be enough for you to be able to then have polis, which would then allow you a vote. But the truth is that you still have to have land for your polis to actually give you a vote within the governance. Well, that brings us to the last lineup of the ships, which are the Titan ships. And these beasts, I don't think we will see them in the mini game. I don't even think we will see them in the early stages, unless what they do is if they do a similar rollout, kind of how Gala did with bringing on some partners that grab citadels. Because this is essentially the moving citadel of within Star Atlas. These things are full-on cities that are just massive in size. Do we even know what was the size on this? Are these the ones that are 1,000 meters? Are they 5,000 meters? How big are these things?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't think we've seen anything related to specific size. I do know that there's supposed to be one level of ship higher that they haven't talked about.
The mothership.
Ships, yeah. I would suspect around at least 1,000 meters.
Yeah, I think that somewhere for a reason I'm thinking between 1,000 and 5,000 is what I seem to recall the Titan ships being listed as.
Yeah, there was a sheet of estimates, I believe, at one point.
Yeah. And so here's another question. So between this one and on the last one that we saw here, where there's one thing here listed as anomaly, everything else is legendary, then we get to anomaly, and then all of these are anomaly. So if we can use this as a point of reference here, there were 224-ish guardians. Okay, so if that's kind of the number point for a legendary, roughly 220, 250 maybe, and then we look here to the anomaly, what do we think? As an anomaly, is there 10 ships?
Seems appropriate based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Are any of these, real quick, are any of these ships that were released as part of the Rebirth event? Was the Pierce C-11 a Rebirth ship?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
The highest was a Calico Guardian.
Got it.
And that was tier 5, which was what $500,000 worth of in-game assets. So I can't remember exactly, but
Yeah.
The other thing that stands out here is these ships are cities, right? But they're still classifying them as a certain type of ship. So it's interesting to see that a city ship is a fighter, 2 of them at least, and another one that would probably be a city ship is a bomber, and not like a mobile, I don't know, species preservation vehicle or something. It's geared towards combat.
Man, if the Super Phoenix is a bomber, that thing I can just see it. It's like the Death Star. It can decimate a planet, But at the same time, maybe with that one punch, it also terraforms an entire planet. Super Phoenix is a cool name.
At this size, they would all be multi-role. Like when you're talking this big, I mean, they all obviously are going to be able to do everything at this point, right?
And then comes in the tree arrow, to replenish everything that was just destroyed, half of the planet, with one of these, and that's why I'm guessing it's an anomaly, because it's going to have to do a lot of the opposite of what these are going to be able to do, which is destruction.
Well, I think
These
that
are-
thimble is probably a terraforming one as well.
Yeah,
I would think so. Yeah.
okay.
The one that really stands out, I guess, is that Busan, The Last Stand. But what's interesting is they call it a Mark 8. So that would suggest that there was at least 7 before them. But yet we don't, there's no lore or history on that. But maybe there will be at some point.
That could be a whole series of ships we just haven't seen as part of the GAO yet.
Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah, these going to be game-changing beasts. Again, the hint drops that we've heard is that these will all go to auction, but I guess the starting bid for these will probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million.
Well, they do well to do it while the market's hot. We're in this bull market right now, and that's the time when people are spending money like crazy. If they wait until a down market to sell this, they may not get as much because there won't be as much free capital flying around.
Yeah, but I also think that they're waiting for DAX, because these are going to be the kind of things that it's not going to be an individual that purchases it unless it's a partner of theirs, kind of like the Citadels and Gala. I think this is going to be a thing where also maybe it's going to be later. I don't even think you don't need something like this in early game. You just don't. Yeah. And if someone did have this in early game, then you just created a lopsided game, because this is the biggest swinging, thing cruising around deep space that's just saying, get out of my way.
Yeah,
that's actually where I was about to go with it, Jesse, because you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in EVE history, right, it took them a couple of years before they started getting to these size of ships. But because this is the crypto space, I could actually see somebody ponying up this kind of money if they have them available right away. Somebody might just show up with one of these right in the beginning, right?
So
it's an interesting dynamic.
Absolutely. And talking about the money that's going to be able to purchase these ships, there's going to be a lot of VCs, like Wagner already alluded to, for guilds specifically. And if I was a VC, I would want to know that there's a guild that's capable, responsible, professional enough to handle such a massive ship that's going to require so many hundreds of people. Literally, there you go. So Rome is where I see, compared to other places, DAC or no DAC. I stress that point because a lot of people coming in, all of these guilds are promoting their DACs. You go to Reddit, you go to Twitter, and we have this DAO, and come join us, and it's the DAC. The DAC is like the face of their brand, almost. And then once you get there, you learn pretty fast as you do your own research. But going back to the VC situation, the amount of money, or we can guess or speculate right now if you want to, as a fun game, to see what companies, like maybe Animoca Games, or like a YGG, right? Potentially, I don't think they have enough. And these starting prices, a little bird told me, as that individual is a VC and was at a meeting. I think it was in LA or wherever it was. He was mentioning to me that these ships are going to be starting at 20 million, not the initial 5 that was talked about. So on that note, who's going to have, what DAC is going to have that many members in it to have that much money in it to buy one of these when that time comes? It's like Bonify said, it's going to take years and a lot of accumulating of assets or in-game rewards to get to that point.
Well, there's one other thing about this ship too. Let's say that you had 20 million and you're able to buy this ship. One of the big challenges that you have of owning this ship is I could easily see this ship costing you 250,000 Atlas a month just to maintain the ship.
There you go.
So that was at 25,000 ish in like real world dollars. So if that's the case, what is the use case for this ship to be able to earn enough to not only offset the cost of maintaining the ship, the fuel cost and the crew cost and everything else associated with it? It has to have it almost needs to be like you need to have a guild where you already have R&D that can move on there. You already have all these money making opportunities that you can then put onto this asset to further leverage it. But just to start off, that's like jumping onto one of the largest cruise ships out there for personal use. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
It would be really awesome if you could only buy these ships using accrued in-game assets. So let's say you had to actually accrue the Atlas to buy these ships, and that would ensure that it's people playing the game who understand the game, and this would give something like an end game guild to something to work towards using accrued in-game assets.
Also,
and on the Go ahead, Ray.
You know, I just had a quick thought too, that whoever these VCs are, or these companies that are going to be able to afford this, they're going to also need to, like we just finished mentioning, it's going to be an inanimate object, and it won't generate any revenue. So they're going to want to return, and that's the only thing VCs care about. So it's just like, who are they going to go to? How confident are they going to be in buying this? And then do they have the infrastructure? Do they have the people, the manpower? So it's going to be an interesting thing that happens, and that's why these VCs are going straight to Star Atlas to have that money trickle down into the guilds. Because what other way is there if this auction is going to take place and it's going to start at 20 million? And then, you know, on the flip side, you know, don't expect any guild, I don't care how much is in their DAO, to buy any one of these Titan ships, even when the auction comes out. And last but not least, the potential of building these in the game, like Banjo was just saying, you know, manufacturing these ships, how long is that going to take? What type of demand and resources and manpower is it going to take to like even Dyson spheres, right?
Right.
I don't think you'd be able to split your guild up, no matter how many people are in there, even a YGG, you know, unless it's so structurally organized. And to build out both a Dyson sphere, which could possibly be bigger than one of these Titan ships, or the same size, right? Who knows? You know, like what these things are to scale. But it's going to be a crazy experience when it comes to the Titan ships, which is a pretty far. It's going to be pretty far out from here, not anytime soon.
And just to come at this from the Murphy's Law perspective, right? It's, you know, I'm not so curious about who's going to have the first Titan ship. I'm actually more curious about who's going to lose the first Titan ship, because I've seen some gamers do some pretty incredible things, and I want to see who's going to get embarrassed by throwing that kind of money into a Titan ship, and somebody coming by with that Pure Sex 4 with the little sneak glitch or whatever, you know what I mean, and taking that thing out. Because I've seen some major powerhouses in a lot of games get destroyed by small groups of people. So
we know that it's going to be metaverse history, right? Once a $10 million ship gets destroyed out in deep space, that's going to make gaming news. That's going to make business news. It's going to make all kinds of news, and it will really bring this gaming style into the mainstream.
And then there's also the potential for espionage, because truthfully, something of this size could probably be taken down easier from the inside. You've got someone in engineering that is just going to like overload the fuel cells and let's get this thing going, barbecue,
or just turn off the weapon systems. You know,
right?
There you go. Yeah, and the last note on this, whoever would acquire this at the time when they're available or when it's finished being built or whatever the case is, you know, watch out anybody else. I don't care if you're a one-man scholarship like organization or you're an actual fleet that's just strictly war. You know, like you're not really going to be able to put up anything. Like I would see it as a very difficult task to even go up against something like this. If this could potentially just destroy a planet or half of it, then there goes your mining equipment. There goes half of your 64 claims on a planet, you know, and then you have to repair all of that. Like, come on. Like, the repair costs are going to be ridiculous if you had a bustling business, you know, planets, you know, mining operation. It's going to be crazy.
Well, these types of ships are going to change combat, right? So if you have a guild or a corporation that has a Busan, you're not going to be able to take them on the same way you would normally with another guild with a lesser asset, right? So maybe this is in a different part of the metaverse. You attack the corporation that has this. You have to do your combat quick before this thing shows up out of nowhere and just starts laying waste, right? So it's going to change even combat.
Yeah, one of the ways I see it playing out is I see that, let's say that a corporation or someone is able to afford this, they fund it, and what they might use it for is they might use it to just sit on a claim out in deep space.
That's it.
So then what do you do? Let's say that this happens to be a corporation of just random faction of mud. So that's an opportunity for Ooster and Oni to say, hey guys, this guy's camped out on it. Why don't we pool our resources and all go out there and attack at once? So that's a way that I could see something like this being taken down, is by two other full factions just saying, let's go at it.
Yeah, true. Eve shows that to be how things are going to turn out, right? There's going to be the powerhouse fact or guild or corporation. and there's going to be a series of alliances that occur to take them out, especially if it's a more malevolent guild, right? One that's really just laying waste wherever they go. There's going to be somebody externally who's going to do an alliance, and then there's also going to be some work done internally on building some, I guess, destruction from the inside out.
Well, here's an interesting thing here that I just noticed on this. So just reading this, because not all of you, because it's in a gray, it's the only one that's in the gray text. If you're watching this, it says the ultimate piece of space traveling hardware. Titan class ships support massive crews and full colonies with self-sustaining ecosystems on board. Here's a key portion: equal to the firepower of a large space station plus an entire fleet of lesser ships. Securing your territory has never been easier. So this here is telling us that if it's equal to the firepower of a large space station, one of the ways that even if you don't have 20 million to buy this thing, if you have a claim and you put a space station out there and you tier up, you scale up the capacity of that space station to being a large space station with a lot of firepower and a lot of mods and comps and things you're putting on this thing to be really defensive. So there's other ways to defend a region other than having a massive Titan ship if they're basing this equal to the firepower of a large space station.
You're bringing up a great point, Justin. I think what's going to happen as we start to see the different phases of the game roll out, once you get to the space station and people realize that that can be a defensive power in its own right, I think it's going to continue to put pressure on the price of some of these ships, right? Because people are going to need to trade money into other assets. I think a lot of people have already kind of blown their wad on what's out there. And now we're going to see some people moving money around from one asset to another. And if spaceships or space stations rather are that strong, you're going to see money moving into it naturally.
Right.
Yeah, that was a great observation there, just because between Polis, Atlas, the ships you want to buy, the ecosystem you want to build as a guild or an individual, and then when it comes to the Titan ships and, ultimately wanting one or building one, it's a long journey and road ahead. So having an economic plan for yourselves, and as Rome does, will definitely get us there sooner than later because of how the organization is. None of this really matters. Like I said, like I always harp on it, unless the economics of the game are sound and the individual guild that you're a part of, because you ain't doing this alone.
Right.
And that's what Wagner stresses a lot. So I'm not just tooting our horn when I say our structure and organization is top notch compared to others that are in the space. It might not be in a year from now because someone might come from EVE Online with their decade plus long infrastructure ready to go. You never know, but it's going to be important.
So Jesse, now that we've gone through the ships, maybe we could wrap this up and because we're at 2 hours and 46 in.
Perfect break point.
We can talk about how maybe the basics of the ship missions that were announced. And maybe someone can mention what that looks like before we wrap off, or we can just fold it up here and we can take that on to next week.
Actually, yeah, that's what we go into after is the browser mini game. So we can always jump into that. We'll pick up where we left off.
All right. So wrap it up.
Yeah. I think we're good.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. And please remember to like and subscribe to Metaverse Nomads. We'll be here every week. Until next time, see you around the Metaverse.